Good to go.
We'll give it another minute here.
You missing something?
I think we're ready. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the.
Same way.
No, I did. Is it echoing?
Yeah.
Good try.
Sorry. Yeah. Disconnect. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regular HARC meeting of June 17th, 2026, 5:30 PM as a hybrid meeting in Rebecca Hall. To remind everybody and those listening, the purpose of HARC is to preserve, maintain, and enhance the historic character, scale, and architecture integrity and cultural resources of the town and to Telluride Historic Landmark District. We had a site walk today at 28 South Fur, where we only talked about specific site conditions and site aspects, and attending on that walk were Michael, Mark Shambaugh, Sherry Gooley, Matt Lee, Stacy Lake, Bob Mather, Andrew Williamson, not in attendance, Elitza, Darren, Michael Owen, Kristen, and the applicants Chris Prepar, Chris Hawkins, and an additional attendee, Corey Booth, who I think was a neighbor. So thank you for coming. Meeting is officially called to order. We will welcome, first of all, staff. We have Kristen, Darren, Mike, Piper, Allie, and from Town Council, gracing our presence, Elena. Thank you. Welcome. And let's do the roll call.
Sherry Gourlay.
Stacy Lake, Matt Lee,
Mark Shambaugh.
Bob Mather,
Andrew Williamson.
Elitza Mladenova.
Okay, do I have a motion for approval of the minutes of 5/20/26, our regular HARC meeting?
I'll move to approve the 5/20/26 HARC draft minutes as written.
Second?
I will second. Stacy will second.
Okay, let's vote. Stacy?
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Andrew, yes.
And I will approve as the only attendee outside staff, the chair meeting of May 20th. Minutes as written. Staff announcements.
Sure. I think the only key announcement is that we have a special meeting of HARC and P&Z scheduled on June 23rd at 1 p.m. in council chambers. That meeting is focused on the code updates associated with the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code. The hope is that that group will make a recommendation to town council at the end of that meeting. Materials will be sent in advance, and that meeting is open to the public for anyone who would like to join us. And thank you.
Good timing of the meeting with red flag warnings everywhere. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items this evening? Non-agenda items, electronic, if you're out there, please raise your hand. Don't see any hands raised. Okay. Then we will move on to our first public hearing item. This is the project at 230 North Aspen, CA 1.
239.
Did I say 239?
You said 230.
239, stand corrected.
Thank you.
Fred, the senior preservationist, Bob Mather. Consideration application for a minor scale amendment to CA 24 010 that does not constitute a vested site specific plan inside the THLD per land use code 7203A3 C3 D3 and land use code 7212. This item was elevated by myself to the full board, which I'll just comment on now. I was rarely uncomfortable with the project, but this project had requested 20 inches elevation, and I knew from my 11 years that the allowance in the guidelines of minimal, that 20 inches was not minimal, and I felt it needed to be elevated to the full board. So that's the explanation of how we got here on this agenda. Legal description is lot 38R, block 3, West Telluride, edition, Dakota edition, and town of Telluride per replat. Recorded 3/11/25 at 488492. Address is 239 North Aspen. It's in the historic residential zone. Owner Harley Barnes. Applicant Narcissus Tudor. staff member Kristen Clothier. Kristen?
Sure. So before I get started on specific projects, I've been asked to spend just 5 minutes, give you a brief overview of the floodplain regulations and why we're coming before you with two of the applications. You'll see two back to back on the same topic. So I'm just going to frame that for both projects and then we'll dive into the actual application. So bear with me. I'm going to be very high level here, but I'm happy to answer questions during the meeting, after the meeting, anytime. So this is a Town of Telluride floodplain review and variance process overview. So let me just put this into a slideshow. All right. And I'll run through this fairly quickly. So a few months ago, during review of building permit applications for projects in the AO flood zone, additional information pertaining to floodplain review requirements, measurements, calculations, and code compliance were brought to the attention of Telluride's building official, floodplain administrator, inclusive of items of which he was unaware previously. The building official floodplain administrator immediately elevated the matter to the department director, which is myself, as the issues raised were complex and required significant due diligence and organization decision-making to determine a path forward. I, in consultation with the town manager, town legal department, and a third-party floodplain consulting team hired to provide neutral expert guidance, determined, after conducting significant due diligence, that we as a town would maintain the flexibility of a variance option to specific floodplain regulations pursuant to Land Use Code Section 8-626, formalize said variance review process, and establish conditions of variance approval to ensure consistency in calculations, establish standardized floodproofing standards, and indemnify the town when granting variances. It was also determined by the town, in consultation with the town legal department, that projects under review at the time the building official, floodplain administrator, became aware of new information of which he was not aware previously, as well as any new projects submitted for permitting since, are required to come into compliance with these standards relative to the granting of variances to the floodplain regulations. So now I'm going to walk you through project reviews in the flood zone AO. There's a standard review process and there's a variance process, which is optional. The standard review process, in brief, all new construction and substantial improvements within flood zone AO must provide a survey confirming the existing highest adjacent grade and the boundaries of the zone AO, certified by a licensed professional surveyor, pretty standard, and demonstrate conformance with the provisions of the established Telluride floodplain codes regulations prior to building permit issuance. So that's the black and white. Follow the code, come in, bring an application forward, follow the code exactly, and you'll run through the building permit process, no variance, no flexibility, none of that needed. Then the town is maintaining its variance process. So our variance process is a variance to specific provisions of the floodplain requirements, and it may be applied for per Telluride Land Use Code 8-626. So the first category of variances is contributing supporting residential structures only. So those are two examples of those you're going to see this evening, where there are new construction and or significant improvements to contributing and supporting structures. In those cases only, a variance may be requested for construction of residential basements below the flood protection elevation, which may include residential habitable space, garages, and or storage spaces. The residential habitable space is only allowed to be asked for and granted in the case of contributing supporting structures. And then we also are allowing flexibility in allowing the steep slope method of calculating highest adjacent grade. So again, these variances are outside of what is allowed by strict read of the codes. It's something Telluride has done for a very long time and allowed, and it's in our land use code to have these variance options. So nothing's changing in terms of that variance option. We're just coming up with processes, procedures, standardizing how that process is worked through moving forward. So also, Variance category 2, non-historic, non-rated structures. Again, this isn't changing past practices. It's just putting processes, standard operating procedures, that indemnification piece in place. So a variance may be requested for construction of residential basements below the flood protection elevation, for residential garages and or storage. And you can also ask, because we have very steep slopes in Telluride, to use the steep slope method of calculating highest adjacent grade. I will note that a few of these variance options, the town 2 years ago, a year ago, and again, we're working on this right now, like in the next days, it will be submitted. We've submitted a request to FEMA for variance relief at the FEMA level. You can ask for variances to certain provisions, big picture. That includes the steep slope calculation of highest adjacent grade, the residential below flood protection elevation, garages, storage space. If those are granted by FEMA at that level, then we update our codes and we no longer need a variance for those categories. That will not be the case for the residential habitable space. That's always going to require a Telluride variance through the town to allow that. For historic structures, there's flexibility in FEMA regulations, and we interpret with a lot of flexibility in terms of how Telluride implements that piece of the variance process. So applications for variance will be reviewed and determinations made per Land Use Code 8626. So it's an administrative review, very straightforward, easy process to apply for. I'm happy to work with anyone who needs it quickly. So conditions of variance approval. And this is the piece I really want to loop you in on. In cases where a variance is granted for a residential level, so commercial, different story, doesn't need to go through this. In cases where a variance is granted for a residential level below the flood protection elevation, the applicant must comply with the following conditions of approval. And this is the area where we've put structure into this process while maintaining its flexibility. So the three conditions of variance approval. Number 1, document that the first floor elevation is at or above the flood protection elevation. If you had a historic structure and you are not lifting it and adding another floor below, that would not be necessary. In cases where you're adding a full floor below the flood protection elevation, you cannot have a second floor, which is an inch, which is any amount above that flood protection elevation. We are requiring that first floor elevation be at the flood protection elevation. Again, I worked very closely with a team of third-party floodplain consultants. They are not advising us on these variances. This is a town thing. This is not something that they are putting forth or approving in any way, but they are helping me come up with the floodproofing standards for these variance approvals. And as part of that, that first floor elevation does need to be at the flood protection elevation. If we're allowing, which we do, we always have, we will continue to allow that below flood protection elevation space for habitable garages storage. So survey confirming existing highest adjacent grade and boundaries of flood zone certified by a licensed professional surveyor is what the applicant must provide, and an engineered floor plan demonstrating that the first floor elevation is at or above the flood protection elevation stamped by a licensed professional engineer. Number 2, sign and record the property owner indemnification release and waiver. So following the approval granting of a variance and prior to building permit issuance, the property owner must sign the document. It was developed by our legal team, record it, and provide us with a digital copy and comply. And that basically, it's indemnifying the town. We are approving projects with these variances that go beyond the constraints of our code. And so we've always done that. We've always required a recording of a document, but it was a very simple, a different type of document that had to be recorded. This is that formalization again of process moving forward, and comply with residential floodproofing standards below the flood protection elevation. Again, third-party consultants help to develop a resource tool for applicants to walk them through what those requirements are, and they are serving as the reviewers for the town currently of applicants coming up to those standards. So if you want a variance, you have to do 3 things. These are those 3 things. And what we found though, and again, per legal, once our floodplain administrator was aware of the issue, anything that had not yet been issued a building permit needs to come into compliance either through black and white code or this variance process. So what you're seeing this evening are two projects where the first floor elevation just needs to come up to that flood protection elevation, minimum possible raising to get there to meet the first condition of that variance and allow the project that you approved to move forward as proposed with that slight adjustment. And I'll walk you through the specific projects. And the one last thing, just at the bottom there, and I didn't see it because I have this thing covering it. I was asked to just share like the calculation, how we're arriving at this flood protection elevation. So the flood protection elevation is defined as, and this is just standard, it's in our code, it's been always in our code. It may not have always been calculated correctly, but it is, nothing's changed. Flood protection elevation is defined as the pre-project highest adjacent grade plus the zone AO flood depth. So you could be in zone AO1, AO2, AO3, so whatever that number is, plus freeboard, which is 1 foot per our land use code, which is land use code section 8624A, which is consistent with the state of Colorado 1 foot freeboard, which communities adopt. And so we have that adopted in our code. So it's highest adjacent grade pre-project, highest adjacent grade plus zone AO flood depth plus freeboard 1 foot. And you'll see that in each of these projects. So I just wanted to remind everyone of what that is. Again, no changes, just making sure everything's calculated the same between all applicants, just standard process. So lastly, quickly, just to wrap this up, as the overview, given Telluride's unique characteristics, geology, topography, historic resources, etc., a solutions-based, case-specific, flexible, and collaborative approach to project review is being taken based on consistent, balanced, and fair requirements and methodology for granting variances. We could be just following black and white. That's easy and straightforward. We are allowing this flexibility, and we're just formalizing our process that is fair and consistent. The third-party floodplain consultants that I've been working with, selected from a large pool of potential consultants, have extensive expertise in floodplain reviews in Colorado, including in rural mountain communities, and working with FEMA regulations and reviews. We have been meeting, myself and the third-party floodplain consultants, with each applicant, including those applicants here, multiple times, doing what can be done to provide support, working through this floodproofing process, et cetera. And we will continue to do that with applicants, but we're going to be catching it pre-HARC moving forward. So we're just working on the in-between, getting through these building permits, and then you will see this all very early from now on. A concise checklist for applicants has been developed to streamline the variance process and outline the specific conditions, requirements associated with variance issuance. Residential floodproofing standards have been developed with significant guidance from the third-party floodplain consultants, and a property owner indemnification release and waiver was developed by the town legal department. I can give you a copy of that one-page document. I've shared it with some of you who asked, but I can distribute it if you want, just the guidance document. And I, along with the third-party floodplain consultants, I already mentioned this, have been working extensively with applicants currently in the building permitting process and to come into compliance as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And the third-party consultants understand, my directive to them was, we are solutions focused, we're collaborative, we are like, let's just work through this and find a path forward as quick as we can. And as soon as they take steps necessary to receive variance approval, what we're doing currently, which we don't do all the time, but in this instance, we are prioritizing those particular applicants, including those in the room. We are issuing preliminary prep permits to allow applicants to begin site work, shore up and move historic structures off-site where applicable. During the time applicants work to complete updates to their building permit submittal to incorporate the floodproofing standards, which are a condition of a variance. So only some of those projects that I'm referring to need to come to HARC chair or HARC if Mark elevates it for the raising of the structures. Some are already at the correct height and don't need this. So a whole bunch are not coming before you, but the ones that need it, I'm trying to get them on your agenda as quickly as possible. And I'll work with Mark for that determination of whether it's coming before all of you or will be through the HARC chair. So that's a high level overview. Mark, I do have the numbers you asked for if you want that update now, or I can give it later during staff.
Number?
You asked me for numbers that might be coming before you.
Sure.
Do you want it now or later? Okay,
Yeah, fine.
so right now, those that have received HARC approval, that either will be coming in for building permit, are in the building permit process, but that are not part of the couple of projects you're seeing tonight. There are 8 more that potentially could need a slight modification in height, just based on where their projects land. So they're not in for a building permit yet, or they're coming in for a building permit, but we're not at this point yet. So there are 8 total, and 5 of them, it would be 1 inch to 4.5 inches, and 3 of them need a bit more than that if they were going to bring that first floor elevation to flood protection elevation. That is a process that would come later, but Mark asked me for just high level, what would we need to be aware of? Because every other project will be coming into HARC, and we're catching them early and working through this process at the outset, so we won't have this exercise. So these applicants, just thank you to these applicants for working with the town. They have been amazing in being collaborative through this process, and I'm grateful. And we're almost there. So that's it. High
Okay.
level. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you. Well, with that, you're gonna go ahead and
Yes.
give you,
Great.
go through your packet recommendations, unless we want to pause for questions now, which we can. the
Happy to
process.
jump right in.
Yeah, I have questions too.
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay.
When was the last flood in the flood zone?
Quite some time ago. And so we have, I'm guessing the direction your question's going in, but why don't you ask your question fully and then I can give you an update.
When was the last time there was a flood?
Yes,
flood zone?
in the 60s. So we have a map. So I think I'll answer a next question that I'm
The
guessing is
69.
going to be asked. Yeah, so in the late 60s. And so we have a map that shows the AO flood zone, the AE flood zone. And one of the things we're considering, so we are, as I mentioned, applying to full transparency, applying to FEMA, asking for those specific variances, what we can ask for, we're asking for this town. And then if we can codify that, then we don't need to do the variances. We also are exploring the possibility of a remap for the town, for a floodplain map. There are pros and cons to that. I have a scope and information, but we're trying to decide whether that is the right direction for the town. We haven't yet made that decision, but it's something that's actively being discussed at the town leadership level, and something that's being considered. So that kind of ties into what you were
Do
asking
we
too.
know if we're currently compliant FEMA regulations on our floodplains and our maps?
In terms, our map is the map, it is the map, and that's what we work off of. The variance process is something that's outside of what the code
I guess what I'm
reads.
asking is do you have to update it every so many years?
There is no requirement for a date that you have to update it, but it's something that we can decide as a town to move forward with.
When was the map done?
I don't have the year off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. I don't have it off the top of my head. I should know that. But
92.
92. And the last flood was 1969.
69, the
Okay.
Cornet Creek flood, where it
Mhm.
was rearranged to channel.
So
Southwest.
it's definitely something that's being actively explored.
Sorry, which one? Sorry.
2005, it's the house that got taken out from your client's city design notes.
There was nothing floating down the street. Well, we can't entertain the public yet, but
Okay,
thank you for a data point.
sure. Okay.
I apologize. This is the first time I think we've all had a chance to absorb this and your materials weren't available beforehand, I don't think, or at least I don't think I got.
This wasn't on the agenda. I was asked to kind of give an overview. I gave an overview at the end of the last HARC meeting, but it was verbal. So I was asked to kind of give a little bit more background and context prior to the public hearing. So I'm kind of doing this informally.
Do you mind putting your presentation back up, specifically the first
Absolutely.
page? I'm
Certainly.
going to go all the way back to the beginning.
And
I'm
if you
sorry.
need, I will say, if you need a full work session on this, like a more full, lengthier discussion, we can always agendize that.
Well,
But I do want you
while
to,
you're pulling that up, I'm just trying to wrap my
Certainly.
head around what the implications are, and what this means for this board going forward.
Sure. For sure.
Or
Um,
Not this board, for me personally, being on this board.
Sure. And just to you, but also to members of the public who might be listening, I am more than happy at any point in time to meet one-on-one with anyone in the community, architects, anyone for whom, if you have questions and you would like more information or get the guidance documents or anything like that. So just reach out anytime. Which slide were you asking about?
So the first item,
This here?
additional information was brought forward. What information and brought forward by who is my first question. And the reason for me asking that question is, who are we responding to? Is this a FEMA request?
It is not a FEMA request. It
A
is
state of
not coming.
Colorado request?
It is not coming from FEMA. It came up in the normal course of review. And
But there has been a change
well, I'll say it
in
this,
interpretation at least.
I will say it this way. Our building official floodplain administrator was not aware of some provisions of the code and calculations,
Who is
et cetera. You can, our building official.
Maybe it doesn't matter. I just,
Yep.
I'm just trying to get to, who are we negotiating, maybe the wrong word. Who are we responding to? We're negotiating with ourselves.
Well, we need to follow our codes. And so, or we have this variance process that's outside of code. But the calculation of highest adjacent grade or calculation of the flood protection elevation, these things need to be consistent and done correctly per the code, per the building codes, land
To
use.
follow then, so
Yes, I'm
previously.
happy to have a one-on-one, Stacy,
we-
anytime.
Well, I'm just
if that's
asking
helpful.
questions in this.
Sure.
Previously, then we weren't compliant.
Previously, I'm not going to go backwards. I would say there were different approaches taken in the past. And once our floodplain administrator became aware of additional information in the code, that that is basically the FEMA compliance piece.
I'm only asking those questions
Yeah.
because you did say multiple times that nothing's changed.
The code is the
I
code.
think something significant.
I think
has
how it's being perhaps implemented, perhaps in terms of how do you calculate flood protection elevation, which includes 1 foot of freeboard per that part of the land use
Sure.
code. How do we look at variances? We haven't had a formal process that really spelled out how
understood.
we would make that
And as a
consistent.
board, and I've only been on the
So,
board for 5 years.
it's that
I've been
consistency piece.
15, I don't remember these discussions taking place at this board.
I don't know.
Okay.
That's because
That
there was no
before my time.
houses, which is our purview.
Yeah, and really this isn't your purview per se. It's that one piece, which is that first floor elevation that I'm coming before you about, because these are historic homes and that elevates it up to the HARC chair level as a minor application. But moving forward, you will be seeing that as part of your packet. You'll see a survey. It'll have the highest adjacent grade. It'll have the first floor elevation. I just need this all squared away from the beginning. I think it's just something that wasn't, I don't know. I can't go backward.
And
It's before my time.
that's fine. Like I said, I'm just trying to figure out where this is coming from.
Sure.
So my only other question, maybe my only other question is, I know you said there were, I don't remember the number, 6 or 8 projects that are currently in the pipeline that they may
That may
happen,
need.
It may be
Yep.
smaller, it may not.
Uh-huh.
Have you done how many of the total historic inventory will now be non-compliant with these new?
We would not go backwards. So it's just if a project comes in that is inclusive of a substantial improvement or new construction, that this would be triggered. That's the same as always as well. So, so this would not come into play until an application comes
But
in that
Depending on the timeline, it's all of them.
I guess you could, sure.
Okay. Have we,
That make them lose their rating.
well, I'm just trying to, again, wrap my head around where this is going.
Yep,
This is-
and again, we have not changed, the variance process was always in place. We have allowed that flexibility. We at the town decision-making level are not changing that. There was lots of discussion and lots of due diligence with a whole range of approaches from black and white. That doesn't work for Telluride. to continue with this flexibility, but giving it just some structure. Need to indemnify the town because it's outside of code, and working with our legal team, with our leadership team, just to sort out a path forward that is the most balanced. It's not changing much. A lot, these things like calculations, basic things should be followed, that, you know, they're in the code.
It would help.
So,
Since this is variance, which we've always had a variance procedure.
yes, absolutely, no change.
Great, it was the carrot to incite
Yeah.
economic.
There just wasn't a lot of
for
structure.
historic houses. But we're really not doing any favor to anybody by continuing the favor, because the Colorado statute 44 CFR 60.3 has always allowed, we have followed waivers of elevation or partial elevation, or even alternative floodproofing methods using wet proofing, not dry proofing. So, I mean, I get, you're trying to follow the state rules, but I think the thing that would help us all, because we're gonna hear vote on a height, is in the equation of simply three variables, highest, and we don't need to go backwards and rehash stuff, but highest pre-construction grade plus AO2, which means plus 2 feet if it's in that zone, plus 1, that's plus 3 feet. Which one of those variables was not being followed? The AO2, the 1 foot freeboard, or the highest pre-construction grade? Which one of those three was not being, if it's not changed, but it must, something's changed, because now we're gonna vote on raising houses.
Sure, I
Which of those
can't
three?
speak for others to answer that in a specific way. My understanding is that a full awareness of how to do that calculation may have been the freeboard. I'm not sure. I don't want to misspeak on behalf of other team members. But I hear what your question is. I also want, you brought up, Mark, the part of the code that you're holding. One thing about that flexibility at the FEMA level is not taking into account what we do here in Telluride. So it's speaking to historic structures and allowing that flexibility to what you were saying. We are allowing the lifting of houses and putting an entire residential habitable floor in, and then replacing those historic structures. So those provisions don't exactly apply. Those would apply if someone came in and they were having a house on its existing foundation, they want to do some work and have it be the same, you know, here's the crawl space. We wouldn't make them raise the first floor to the flood protection elevation. We wouldn't do that. I wouldn't be doing
I'm
that.
not quoting FEMA, this is the state of Colorado.
But
They allow, and based on the 4 conditions, you know, include one of them as your signature.
yes,
They allow no elevation change or partial elevation change.
yes.
or No floodproofing, or the most stringent wet floodproof.
But again,
Quote.
that's for a historic structure.
Yes.
We are putting a full new floor. FEMA does not allow a full floor habitable space
Well-
below the historic structure the way we do it here. So that's the difference between, like, yes, if someone came in with a project not asking for that, that would apply. I would agree with you. They can have their elevation and their first floor elevation
Yeah,
wherever.
the state recognizes.
I agree with
our
that.
Condition.
But we have this variance, this whole other
Okay.
piece of this. So two things, depending on the project that
Okay.
comes in, whether or not that applies. But I agree with you, that exists for those who want to maintain their historic structure and not take advantage of the variance.
Okay, so as this board evaluates height, we're trying to calculate height, but we don't know which of the three variables, the highest pre-construction or the AO2 or the +1, was not being followed for 32 years.
I don't even know that is, I
Well,
can't
it's only
speak for my
relevant if we answer
predecessors.
Stacy's question of what changed, because we're gonna vote on a change.
I
Based-
have that same question.
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to figure out
Go ahead.
what changed in order for us to raise these houses. Like there's obviously a change if we're being asked to raise the houses. So I want to know specifically what the change
Sure.
is so that we've got a rationale and a reason to vote for a change.
Sure, so the math has always been in the code, nothing has changed. Highest adjacent grade,
Why are we reviewing these projects if they're not?
because
assuming they
these
were-
were approved. So these projects were approved prior to, how to say it. Now there's an awareness of our floodplain administrator of what things need to be. We have gone through this exercise, but projects in the past, including one from quite some time ago, there are others that don't come in for a period of time, have this was not how it was looked at during that building staff review prior to you seeing it. So, but the numbers haven't changed. They should have been that is the highest adjacent grade plus the AO flood zone depth +1. That's just in the code. Like that's, but bringing, I guess I would say it this way, having the first floor elevation be at the flood protection elevation, that is something, again, working with our third-party floodplain consultants, having a whole floor below flood protection elevation, they're not supportive of that, but they're helping me flood-proof that. Then you have the first floor elevation. If you go above that, you now have 2 floors and people sleeping in the low floor. So for that reason, there needs to be a standard of first floor elevation needs to be at the flood protection elevation. That's the line that the town is drawing for variances, if that's helpful.
Was there just one consulting company? Was there multiple or just one?
We worked with one consulting company after looking at many consulting companies and selecting one that had expertise in both FEMA regulation review as well as working in rural Colorado Mountain communities.
Which has changed staff's interpretation.
Which has not changed. This is a lot. I wasn't expecting this, so I want to be mindful.
And it's a lot for us, too.
That's sure. So I wouldn't say it's changed staff's interpretation. I would say that we have always had a variance option in the code. We did not have standard practices or processes. I don't know if that information was being looked at the HARC, like pre-HARC. I don't know. But moving forward, we need to know what the first floor elevation is, what the highest adjacent grade is, and make sure we design these projects to meet those needs. Most of them don't require a lot of change. It's just now trying to find that balance for existing projects.
But none of this is like in our land use code or our design guidelines, which is what.
It is in our land use, like that calculation,
That it's supposed to be post instead of pre
pre,
measurement.
it's pre versus post. That's
Pre versus
just
post.
standard calculation per FEMA. Yeah. I mean, that's just the, yes,
I just have maybe it's a crazy question, but
sure.
let's say you raise this building up 3 feet and you're now violating the height limit because of an existing building.
I haven't had
Right.
that situation come up and I'm really hoping it doesn't happen. So if we can just get through this little batch, because you would then know, for the ones coming into HARC, you will know that answer. You would not approve the project if it's not land use code compliant, period. I'm just dealing with the ones that have gone through HARC and now need a little adjustment in order to go through. That is not the case with these projects. They're all
Well,
height compliant.
understand that, but if somebody comes in and buys a house and they have to raise it up and it violates the height limit,
Then they can't do the project, right? Like if it's not land use code compliant, when they come in with a project, then I mean, that's a whole other thing. But you can't propose a project that is not land use code
The
compliant.
top doesn't change, but the bottom is moving up.
Top doesn't
So there-
change.
the
So
height limit.
shrinking.
Well, I
That's
think
the
in that
look.
case, they would probably seek a variance to the land use
They can
code
do that.
provisions or the guidelines. I think there's
They
a
certainly can do
way,
that.
yeah, and if I can just jump in here, Kristen, because I think there's a lot of confusion about where this issue came from, and I
Sure.
don't,
I'm happy to.
I
help
want to,
navigate that.
yeah.
Thank you.
But I think it can probably simply be summed up as nothing has changed in the text. Existing staff realized when new staff came in with, of course, new knowledge, that there were processes that were not being applied correctly. So with that new understanding, we went out and we sought the opinion of consultants to say, what can we do about this? Those consultants have given us direction as to what it is we need to do, what we need to apply moving forward, which has always been applicable, just been overseen for a period of time. So there's nothing new in the code to apply here. There's a new understanding among staff as to what it is that how we need to review these projects, therefore the process that it needs to go through for approval. So that is why this has now become an issue. However, understanding that this is going to cause an issue moving forward, we're now working very closely with FEMA to come to a resolution with FEMA as to how we can go back to a closer review that followed our old standards versus this new understanding of how these regulations need to be applied by staff when reviewing projects.
Appreciate that insight. And again, it's a simple formula, as Kristen pointed out. There's only three variables.
Mhm.
The pre-construction grade, the AO2 application plus one, and the interpretation has changed. The formula, the text is, to quote you, has not changed, but the interpretation has changed. We don't know which of those three variables changed, but we're here to judge height and elevation to try to do. But I don't understand why we can't just comply with the state of Colorado's regulations, which are very clear to give this flexibility when FEMA, my understanding is, hasn't, well, we don't know what FEMA is today. It's sad. And I know the town has been trying, but hasn't it been a year and a half since they've even replied to anything? I mean, I don't think there is a FEMA in this zone and for 14 more months.
And again, the
18
reason
months.
that can't apply, it cannot apply in cases where you're putting in a floor of residential, habitable storage, garage space, residential space below the flood protection elevation. That's where that then no longer applies. But for anything, any project that's not doing that, that absolutely applies, Mark. And you certainly don't need to change the height of historic homes to meet, I mean, that flexibility is there, but it's within the bounds of there not being a full floor below, which we allow and will continue to allow.
New construction as part of a project. So I think the Colorado regulations would apply if you had an existing house that you're just trying to make safer. It's a historic structure. And therefore you might need to bring it up some to comply with the code provisions for flood proofing. But if you were doing more than that, not just making the existing structure safe, you're adding a whole new floor beneath. That's where the distinction comes in.
Okay, well, FEMA hasn't bothered in a year and a half to talk to us, and I'm not sure.
We are actively engaged
No, I
currently.
understand. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go there. We'll just it's frustrating for all of you. But I don't know if all the questions have really been answered.
I'm sorry, I'll go one more time. So all of our projects now that are brought before HARC are subject to third-party review by the third-party consultant. So we're now married to a third-party consultant for every project.
It will eventually be within staff review, but currently I'm having a third-party consultant do those reviews versus our building official floodplain administrator to work through this exercise and get standards in place. So, and I'm currently the town is paying for that, not the applicants at the moment, to work through this process.
So this is more of a comment than a question, but it seems like there are 8 projects that have HARC approval that had designed their projects per how the floodplain was administered before. And when they went in there for building permits, it sounds like they're being told that staff has changed or the consultant has changed their mind. So midstream, they're having to redesign the project and HARC is being asked to allow projects to be raised. Why are these projects not grandfathered in or giving a grace period?
That was a question I asked our legal team right off the bat. And the answer is, once you are aware of something being incorrect, no building permit had been issued, it had to be corrected. Like, we had to have the process. We had to, there was no, I did ask that question. That was my first question. Because clearly that would have eliminated a lot of these projects, but that is not something we can do as a town once we're aware of something that the town had not been aware of, or the floodplain administrator had not been aware
I
of.
understand. I've seen this
Okay,
before in
thank you.
history.
Yeah.
But it's still a matter of interpretation with the reality of the conditions in this town.
Yes.
Um,
And that's why we're keeping the variance, like, we're not changing, we are doing things differently than any other community. But that is what we will continue to do. And that's
well, okay.
the path forward for sure.
I have a question regarding dry proofing versus wet proofing. My understanding, and I'm not an architect, so maybe the architects could weigh in, that dry proofing is significantly more onerous and expensive to achieve than the wet proofing. So can you give us some context on that
Sure.
decision?
Again, so the wet floodproofing is in the case of commercial structures. For residential structures, our third-party consultants are utilizing the dry floodproofing standards for residential. That is the exception in FEMA, which we might get granted for like garages, storage spaces, but there's a residential floodproofing standard, and that's a dry floodproofing standard, which is different than the wet floodproofing that we allow in commercial structures. None of that is changing
Well,
for
You
commercial.
might want to explain the difference.
I'm not gonna go into that in depth, but I can tell you it's $100,000 to $200,000 more per project. On the town's project down here on Lot L and Carhenge, it could be 2 million more with dry proofing versus wet proofing, and wet proofing is allowed by state code. And wet proofing is what we've been using until now.
For
That's not the
commercial.
change that caused the height, but it is a change.
Mhm. So we're talking residential
I
and
know, you can't even look it up under the ASC 2424. It's for, the dry proofing is used for much more stringent applications, but
again,
we're changing wet.
we're
proof to
allowing
dry proof.
habitable residential space
Yeah.
below the flood protection elevation, which is the town's decision through its variance process.
Okay,
So
and
it's just
this is a point of
making it as
fact.
safe as it can be.
This is not opinion. It
Mhm.
is fact, a matter of fact.
Mhm.
There's not one contractor in this town, and we've got one sitting in the room, two sitting in the room,
Sure.
that are capable of doing dry proofing on a monolithic pour, and then the shafts from the window wells that you have to escape during a fire, which have to now go above grade. There's, which is something HARC would never approve on an historic house in the middle of the yard. Those are problems beyond elevation, but since somebody brought it up, I just wanted, I think there's options for the town to navigate through this, but I think it needs some more time.
And I
But-
will say
We'll see.
there was a lot of due diligence, a lot of funds invested in third-party consultants. A lot of work has been done in recent months to get to where we are. I think there needs to be flexibility. We're finding balance. It's tough with land use planning. You're finding balance between everything. So right now we're trying to balance this wildfire resilience code with historic preservation, with community character. Everything's a balance. The window wells we are allowing the highest adjacent grade calculation with steep slopes, so that brings them down. But the only way the floodproofing works is if you don't, allow water in.
Dry proofing.
So
Wet
dry
proofing
proofing.
allows flow through, which is
Yes,
what we've
but
been
that-
using for 32 years.
For commercial spaces, and I think there's been a variety, there's been variability in how things were done up till now,
Okay.
for sure.
Kristen,
Yes.
you mentioned that you're working on, standards, which means that there are standards that will be put in place.
And I have a document I'm happy to share with you if you'd like.
That'll be amazing.
Okay, great.
But what I'm taking out of this meeting is that we as a board, I wasn't aware of this until this meeting today.
Mhm.
And we will be voting on a matter that we are not fully educated on. And to me, it seems that as you're working on the standards, to me, it seems like the meeting and putting these meetings together for this project, it's premature. And we need to discuss this as a board. You mentioned maybe a work session, because this impacts all of us, and it needs more study, and it needs a little bit more feedback from us moving forward.
I'm gonna
This is quite
reset.
major.
I absolutely hear you. I'm gonna reset though and say that this path forward is determined. This is the path that the town is taking after much discussion, work with third-party consultants. This is the way we're enabling the variance process, the flexibility to continue with some standard practices based on just the rules in the code. Again, we're allowing so much variance to that. And we're approaching FEMA, and we're thinking about remapping. But in the present, this is that path forward that the town is taking. And it's not something we're working on. We need to actively get everyone into building permits. So we don't want to slow this down. I want these applicants to be able to move their projects forward. They are ready. They just need this slight adjustment, and working with us on the flood proofing. Everyone's getting through the process as fast as they can. And I don't want to, we can't slow things down. Took a minute to figure out, there were differences of opinion from the whole spectrum of what we could be doing. And this is the balance with lots of flexibility.
Okay,
That's
if I
the
could
word of-
suggest, I think we should move forward with
Sure.
first application. I think there's concern on the board, and during deliberations, we'll have some
Okay.
further discussion on it. But so I only have one germane question for this specific first project. And that was when it came to me and it showed a 20-inch elevation on this corner lot in the most stringent HR section. And again, as you've rightfully so preached, corner lots deserve special sensitivity. It was 20 inches. How did they get down to 11.75? Because the third-party consultant you said is reviewing this. How did they allow
Certainly.
to go down 9 inches?
Certainly. So a lot of applicants, and this probably is the case across the board, are using old surveys that are not detailed, that are not specific to the project, et cetera. So we now have new standards for surveys. Like we're trying to make things be more clear coming into review.
You say there's new stuff. So if there's gonna be new standards, that needs to be disseminated among.
And they're not in place yet. It's just something we're discussing of how to make this easier. We need certain measurements on surveys.
Using a wrong survey when they came to me?
Not in that sense, but they just got a more precise survey. Let me say it that way. I
Okay, we'll go to the
suggested,
applicant.
yeah, the applicant can answer, but they had their surveyor go out and actually survey more specifically the exact bounds of the final approved structure that you approved. And there was variation throughout the review process. Now there are very precise bounds. And so getting that survey done of exactly what they're going to build.
You follow the
Yes.
perimeter that was what was approved, and that's what.
Exactly. So that's kind of what we're going with, and you can provide more
Okay, it's
clarification.
okay, we can, unless there's other questions, let's go on to the hearing and the applicant and start where you want, but of course, we would love to hear the answer to how we found 9 inches in 1 month.
Sure. Do you want me to go first as usual?
Sure.
I'll just do my quick presentation and then pass it on to the applicant here.
Sorry, we didn't even do that yet.
We haven't done that. Nope.
God.
Whoop, wrong thing. Hang on. That was the memo. That's, you don't want to read that on screen. Hang on. Okay. If I can get myself back to where I was. All right, I think I have to reopen it. It seems to have, oh, here it is. Okay, I'm good. All right. Let me just go to, and I know that was a lot. I've been putting a lot of time into this, and I'm happy to sit down with any one of you anytime. 239 North Aspen. All right, so Mark already read the overview, site significance and context. You all remember this. It's 2 contributing structures, very significant resources in this community. I won't get into detail. I'll kind of speed along here. So summary of a CA amendment request. The original certificate of appropriateness for the project was issued on 5/21/24. The applicant subsequently prepared and submitted architectural and engineering drawings for building permit review. The property is located in flood zone AO2. To address the permitting requirements for properties in the AO2 zone and to come into compliance with floodplain codes, regulations, and policies, the applicant is requesting consideration of a CA amendment for a minor scale alteration. The request is to raise the first floor elevation of the rated primary structure, inclusive of the connector and addition, to the flood protection elevation. Proposed CAAs that involve minor scale activities require a public hearing at the HARC chair level. The HARC chair elevated this to HARC at the HARC chair meeting on May 20, 2026, as Mark mentioned. Subsequent to the May 20, 2026 HARC chair meeting, the applicant had an updated survey completed by a licensed professional surveyor, as the initial survey utilized to calculate highest adjacent grade was not precise to the structure that was finally approved by HARC. The more accurate and detailed survey allowed for a more precise calculation of highest adjacent grade and the associated flood protection elevation. Again, flood protection elevation is pre-project highest adjacent grade plus zone AO flood depth plus freeboard, which is 1. Based on this updated survey, the applicant is requesting to raise the primary structure, inclusive of the addition and connector, 11.75 inches to raise the first floor elevation to the flood protection elevation. Approval from HARC to raise the primary structure the 11.75 inches will allow the project to proceed as previously approved by HARC pursuant to CA 2410, subject to the conditions of the variance outlined above, or outlined below, sorry, it should say below. HARC approval of CAA number 1 will bring the first floor elevation to 36 inches above the highest adjacent grade as required in flood zone AO2. So concurrently, the applicant is requesting administrative review and approval of a variance to specific floodplain regulations for contributing supporting structures pursuant to Land Use Code 8626. The variance is administratively approved with the following conditions. I already went over these with you in the overview, but I'll go over them for each project. The applicant must demonstrate that the first floor elevation is at or above the flood protection elevation, which requires the requested HARC approval to raise the contributing primary structure to the minimum amount necessary. The property owner must sign and record the property owner indemnification release and waiver, and the applicant must comply with residential floodproofing standards below the flood protection elevation. The applicant has agreed to comply with conditions 2 and 3. Approval from HARC is required in order for the applicant to meet condition 1. So staff worked with the applicant with review and guidance from third-party floodplain consultant to determine the necessary steps to bring the project into compliance with floodplain codes, regulations, and policies. Raising the primary structure by 11.75 inches is the minimum necessary to allow the project to proceed as approved previously by HARC to building permitting. Rehabilitation standards RE1A is to preserve a historic structure in its original location on the site when feasible. RE1A4 states that a historic house may be minimally raised if deemed necessary for its preservation. Circumstances that may be considered for a house to be raised are location in the floodplain, or the relationship between the house and grade has changed due to flood or the street being raised over time. So so floodplain is one of the standards that can be applied for raising a historic structure per the design guidelines. So the design guidelines recognize that a historic structure may be minimally raised if deemed necessary for its preservation. The design guidelines also specifically state that location in the floodplain is one of the circumstances appropriate for consideration of raising a historic structure. In this instance, the property is in the flood zone AO2. Raising the structure by 11.75 inches is the minimum necessary to bring the first floor elevation to the flood protection elevation. And the relationship of the first floor to finished grade should be retained through grading landscaping post-construction to the greatest extent possible, taking into consideration site-specific factors such as existing topography, which in this site are definite factors. So the staff recommendation here is based on a review of the application submittal materials, meetings with the applicant and a third-party consultant, and the findings and analysis above. We recommend approval of the proposal with conditions, and the conditions are just the standard condition of a CAA, and that the relationship of the first floor to finished grade should be retained to the greatest extent possible, taking into consideration the site-specific factors such as existing topography. So that is it. Again, they are in for building permitting, and this is sort of the step that is needed for them to be able to proceed. And they did the work to bring forth the minimum necessary that they need to move the project forward as designed and as approved by HARC. And that's all for me.
Okay, we'll hear from the applicant. You want to share your screen and name in the record, please.
Narcis Tudor. I want to say ex-HARC member, but I'm just going to say architect for this one.
You miss us?
Yeah, I do. So thank you, Kristen.
It's me.
I know that bigger picture has been discussed here. So I'm going to address my application, which is obviously before you guys. Kristen has been very generous in answering my questions, helping me along with this. For me, the big one was the timeliness, because we had submitted hoping to get a permit and start construction. So when we met with a floodplain consultant and with Kristen, we were told, listen, you really need to raise this house. So that was based on what we submitted to HARC and got approved.
When was that?
That was 2 years ago.
And 2 years
when
ago?
we submitted to HARC and got approval. So when we had the meeting, it was in May, or I believe it may have been late April.
When did you get denied your permit?
Oh, yeah, their permit has not.
We haven't been given a permit.
No, I know you. When did you apply for the permit? That's all.
That's a good question. I think we submitted in early April, I want to say.
Okay, thank you.
And then we
But
onto your agenda, Mark.
Yeah, but the contractor will probably be able to answer that question a little better. Anyways, so when the town requested that we have a meeting, our feeling was it was gonna go through preservation methods because it's a contributing structure. So when the floodplain issue came up, the floodplain consultants had done extensive work on our project and said, look, here's your finished floor. Here's the high grade that you have based on your height calculations. And based on this, you need to raise the house 21 inches. So after they were thorough explaining to me the whole process, I had two questions. One obviously was already addressed here. Would I be grandfathered in? The second one was, what is the next agenda on which I can jump on right away? So Kristen said, you can get on the May agenda, but you need to submit by tomorrow. So what I did was I took my drawings and I said, these guys said 21 inches. I understand why they're saying this. I adjusted my floor an inch or whatever it was, minimal, and I submitted it the next day. Okay, so Mark, what you saw there was not of, I wasn't able to truly go through my drawings and study exactly what needs to be done. Now, to answer your question as to where's the difference in the 20 inches. So I'll explain that. So the survey that we did use, and this was in the original packet, but I'll just share it with you guys here. Okay, so what I want to point out here is basically this. So you notice the porch here is at 46.62. It's actually sloping, and you'll see it in the photos. And then the finished floor here is at 47. So I'm just going to round out the numbers, but we're talking about 5 inches, 5-inch difference between the front porch and the floor. So because the ceilings are low, I dropped that floor, that 5 inches to match the porch. Okay, so if you take that 5 inches, then when you look over here, I use this elevation of 45.11, but you can see it's actually under the eave. So this was 45.3. So that's another 3 inches. So if you look at it, 5+ inches plus 3 inches, it gives you about 9 inches. So that was the difference. Since then, after we were continued, I went through, I talked to Kristen, I talked to the floodplain people, and I said, explain to me exactly what I need to do, and can I adjust my grades? Can I do any of that? They said, no, your high grade is your high grade. They recommend we get a thorough survey. So I basically took the existing house, I put the dots everywhere, peppered the whole perimeter, and they surveyed that. So we received this letter that said, the highest grade adjacent against the actual structure is 88.45. Okay. So now if I go back to my survey, so what I did then is I squeezed as much as I could. So I brought the finished floor back to where it is historically at 47. Okay. So now we are 47 with our finished floor and we're at 45 with our outside grade. So that's the difference that there's nothing I can do about except ask for this 11.75 raise.
Okay, so you used up the 5 inches by raising that with the second
I brought
porch.
it back. So my ceiling.
Oh, if you
now-
brought it back?
Yeah, I brought it back to where it is historically right now.
Oh.
So instead of dropping my floor to get a little bit over 9 feet ceiling, I'm at 8 feet 7 3/8 for my finished ceiling on the main level. So I'm not going to talk space planning, but when you look at that main level, it's all open in my floor plan. So when you have that kind of volume with low ceilings, it starts to look like this place, right? So it needs to be at about 9.3. That's the way that I originally designed it and I submitted. Now I'm eating up that ceiling height. So now my ceiling height is 8.7 3/8. That's including this, hopefully your guys' approval of 11.75.
So you can't take back the 5 inches and go back down
I'd
5
like to,
inches
but then
further.
I'd have to ask for that additional 5 inches to be past the 11.75. I'd love to ask you guys for 18 inches. It would help me a lot. But Mark, you said in your 11 years was 12 inches. I went under 12 inches for that reason.
Well, but they weren't for necessarily this reason on this lot, but that's
know,
okay.
but-
I did say the most I remembered was 1 foot.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's the calculation for it. So this 11.75, historically the floor is where it is. My ceiling heights are low. I don't have another element that I can adjust. I cannot adjust my grade. I cannot do any of those things, right? So that's why I'm here asking you guys for this. Now, the one thing that I do want to bring up is what is reasonable to actually raise a historic structure, especially regarding its original location, context, etc. So for having been here for 22 years, and I've seen different levels of enforcement regarding the floodplain. And one of them, Bob Mather, I think you may have been baptized by fire when you were a planner, but I think one of the first projects you reviewed was Bleak House 551. That was like 13 years ago. So this house is oriented north-south on Main Street, historic, and this thing in the back was running into the ground. So when I submitted for HARC, the building department reviewed the drawings because they do take a shot at it. And they said, you're in the flood zone, you need to bring it compliant with the floodplain. That was it. So when I went to HARC, the board said, how much are you raising it? And I said, I need to raise it 4.5 feet. And they said, oh my gosh, can you step your floors? And I said, yeah, I can step my floors. Within reason, in order to still follow that line. That house was approved at 43-inch raise to meet the floodplain, but it was a building department condition that they had put before. I feel like I'm asking you guys this now, which I feel a little bit stupid.
Yeah. And
So when I initially submitted this for a HARC, Jonna reviewed it, went through, we had a work session with you guys. So that wasn't brought up. My finished floor was that 2 foot above, so 47 versus 45. That AO is that 2 feet. I believe that that's the way that it was interpreted then. Now this additional foot is what I'm asking for. Regarding, I'm gonna switch
I
gears.
just want to add a footnote.
Yeah.
Talking that.
And you guys listen, ask me questions. on
Yeah,
it.
but I mean, that we've adjudicated this before, houses on Colorado where the street level had
Yeah.
changed. I'm not aware of Galena or Aspen Street changing post flood like 2 feet. Columbia was raised 2 feet, for instance.
Right.
The next project. But I'm not aware of this street changing, and that was one of the reasons in Colorado, I wasn't on the board 13 years ago. But anyway,
Anyway,
just
so
for
the
matter
other
of
thing that
fact.
I wanted to bring up is just context. So if you guys allow this structure to be raised, the 11.75 inches is gonna be one riser in about a half. Okay, so that's basically how we would look from the Aspen Street. This is directly across the street at 240 North Aspen. So you can see basically they have this wedge here and they have basically 2 sets of steps, 2 sets of stairs. Okay, right next door, 229 North Aspen. I was on the board actually when this thing came through. This has a walkout basement. Their main level is it's less than a foot, I think, above the ground. But I believe they consider their basement being above grade, which met the floodplain. But their rating was non-contributing with qualifications, so they couldn't do it. So they had to go through and change some of the siding and a few things in order for the board to raise it to a supporting so they can actually get a little basement. So during my whole time here, there was an incentive from the town to preserve historic structures. So if that meant giving people leeway or whatever was, look, we want you to do this, we want you to preserve it, we don't want it to fall into disrepair, etc. Which we don't see as many now, but a while back, there were some that were just basically falling over. So that was the initial thing. Now it's becoming obviously a little bit more stringent. This whole process is also to what? I'm not asking to raise the house. The town's requiring that for my building permit. Why? To protect it. So again, it falls under the same category of protecting it. So I do want to bring this house, which is supporting right next door, downhill from us. So you can see there's a step here that goes from the porch to the actual finished floor. So if you consider that one, and then you'll go down here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 risers. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the project that we're discussing, and you'll see here that basically I have 3 risers and a half. So if I add this 11.75, what you're gonna see contextually is you're gonna see a total of 5 risers.
Well, there can't be 11-inch high riser. I mean,
No, so it'd be one.
you're almost gonna have 2 risers or 1.5, so.
1.5. So here, since this one's a wedge, I consider this to be half, and then we have 3. And if I make this one a full one and then I add another one.
Yeah, it's almost
that
6,
make up.
5.5 risers.
Yeah, so from the street, from Aspen Street, this would have 5 risers. The house downhill is gonna have 6 that goes into their house. So does it look disproportionate compared to the height percentage wise, et cetera? It doesn't. like I said, you'll see on Colorado Avenue, houses that are historic, that are basically sitting on their lot. You'll see other ones with 2 sets of steps. I think the whole town eventually is gonna have to start raising their structures. Everything else I think that was discussed, I'm more than happy to answer any specific questions, but I hope that satisfied your question. And for you guys to consider this 11.75. It's a necessity that I'm asking for the project to be able to move forward.
Okay, I have a couple more, but I'm just gonna wait, open up to
I
the
have a
board. Who
question.
would like to ask questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
On condition number 2 about the relationship of the first floor to the finished grade. You don't have a tremendous amount of space between the house and Galena. To take into account, it would be taking into account that 11.7 inches, correct? So you'd be grading up if you were trying to match it. I guess my question is, how do you deal with that when you come around the corner? And do you think you have enough room to make that work and not look like,
Yeah.
a mound?
So I do, there's been a number, again, Galena specifically, when you look at, even across the street, you see a lot of high retaining walls, et cetera.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So in this situation, obviously, this has been a historic house. It's got a historic basement to it, right? And it was built in 1905, so it was 9 years before the 14 flood. So it obviously survived it. My point is, I'm trying to bring it into compliance. I do have this terrace in the back. I do have planters. So I'm definitely smoothing that whole area. But when you look at, raising it 3 feet, I think that'd be pretty significant, where you're gonna actually start to see just a slight differentiation in that whole context. 11.75, I think, is reasonable. Percentage wise, when you look at the height of the house, the width of the house, it's not a huge amount. But again, I'm definitely gonna blend it in and make it work. I try to skin it every way possible. I even asked if I can adjust my grade to connect the point in basically the northeast corner to the corner in the northwest corner and just triangulate it. And I can't,
Why?
because it's the sanctity of the existing high grade, not proposed high grade. What would that give me? It would give me about another 4 inches maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm not allowed to do it.
Well, the consultant said no.
The consultant said no, but I'm not getting a building permit, so I can't touch it. That's
Well, the consultant said no.
anyways, that was a question that I said, look, if I grade, I'm not gonna create a trench. I'm just gonna basically level the grading. We're gonna have a drainage plan, et cetera. Am I allowed to consider post-construction grade? And the answer is no. So that took one factor out of it that I was planning on using. So I understand your guys'
Okay,
I understand your guys' concern because I was there, so I know what you're dealing with. What I'm trying to say here is I don't have too many options.
okay. In that calculation, you did 5 inches off of this 11.75?
Don't quote me on that yet, because
Roughly.
I asked before I looked at these two numbers.
Okay.
I drew a diagonal line and I said, would I be able to do this? It dropped it a few inches, but they said, no, it's gonna be the surveyed existing grade that we
Okay.
currently have it. That's why we actually went and got the certificate.
Okay,
for it.
well, let's have other questions.
Well, first of all, are we done with the applicant
No.
presentation?
Oh, well, are
If
you?
you guys have questions for me that I can answer.
I sense he was finished, but.
Oh, okay. So your building height, I just want to verify, your average building height is 21'10".
Yes.
So if you raise it, let's just, for easy math, a foot, you're at 22'10". You're 2'2" under the height limit.
Yes.
So what is the variance to? You're
I'm
not,
actually raising a historic structure that should not be touched. I think I'm being
We need-
extreme in my character.
we need a variance for that?
The variance that he is receiving is you have a floor below that.
I have a basement that's gonna be livable basement.
Yes, that's what
That's
the variance is for.
We're gonna issue a variance every time.
It's for the residential habitable
Okay.
space. So projects that have residential habitable space need to apply for the variance because that's outside of what the code allows. When they get the variance, they will need to bring that first floor elevation up to the flood protection elevation so that they don't have 2 floors below the flood protection elevation. Again, if it's even a little bit over, it counts as a floor. So that's just a condition of the variance.
Understood. I
Yeah.
thought incorrectly.
No, that was a good question.
Variance was to the height limit, but you're
And no.
still 2 feet under.
Nope.
I'm still
Every-
compliant. I'm not asking for.
That could be
any other-
something down the road. If somebody comes in and they end
Oh,
up being
right.
over, then they would have to
You're
deal with
thinking
it.
about the variance Ali mentioned, and yes, if we had a project that did need a height variance,
Yes.
that's a whole other process.
Right.
We're not doing that today.
The big thing, you guys, I'm just gonna say it flat out. I've had a number of these applications before, where when I brought them before HARC, I said, I need to be floodplain compliant. I'm requesting to raise the structure X amount. I'm still compliant by X. And it was reviewed at that same time, and you guys have probably seen these.
And that's how it's gonna be moving forward.
The issue I think that we're dealing with here is that I got my CA. And now I have to come back to you guys asking for this, so it seems like it's a big thing, but to Stacy's point, you're correct, I'm still significantly below the height limit.
Okay, other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, again, just regarding the dry proofing requirement and the window well for the egress window that you have below there, does that mean that there would need to be some sort of that the well would need to extend up above grade to the,
To 3 feet.
yeah, do you know what?
And
Unless you've got a
Does that have to go to the-
waterproof egress window, which I don't know how you do that.
Well, there's another elephant in the room here, which maybe I should keep that cat in the bag, but in Telluride, water isn't really the issue.
No.
So you can get a window all you want. It's debris.
Mhm.
Anyway, I don't know if
Two,
you do debris proof windows.
Well, let's Sherry continue if you have a follow-up, and then
I
Casey.
can respond if you want me
Right.
to, Narcissus, it's up to you, to Sherry's question.
Yeah, and in particular, there's
happy-
the egress window on the north elevation, which would be facing
Yeah.
Galena.
And I
So it'd
can-
be highly visible, presumably.
I think I can speak to that. So for any minor modifications that are needed to things like that, those are insubstantial applications if we need it to come to make it all work for the building code aspect. But we're using the steep slope highest adjacent grade whenever there are slopes. So we're keeping the level to the exact level the window wells need to be floodproof compliant. But those are just insubstantial CAA amendments to their application. So we'll take care of that if it's needed.
That's not gonna be an insubstantial thing, having a window well stick up 3 feet out of the ground.
Well, it won't be 3 feet. We will work to make sure it's the least possible.
6 inches, we've never approved that before. I mean, it's in the guidelines that we, on full contributing houses, we don't even allow these in the front yard, let alone a street side.
So we
And-
are,
And they are under porches or, hidden.
they are,
This is gonna be
So
above ground 2 feet.
we will make sure, again, they're insubstantial, then we will make sure that they are not impactful to the greatest extent possible with the design guidelines. We have to find a balance here. I know this is just, we're not going black and white code. We're allowing so much flexibility, and there needs to be a balance between everything here, including the floodproofing aspects of these projects. And so I'm hoping you'll work with myself, with applicants, with my team to move projects forward that find that balance. And again, we have a similar thing with the wildfire code and just, raising the structures though with the first floor elevations, the flood protection elevation is protective. That is true in the case of if there were a flood, if there were debris flow, et cetera. So there's that benefit as well.
Okay, Sherry, did you have another question?
No.
Yours answered, okay.
Yep.
Stacey, we'll just come down the line and let everybody ask some, other questions
Oh, I'm gonna ask mine on the fly, if you don't mind.
on the fly.
When they pop into my head.
Oh, okay,
I
that's fine.
have a series of questions. Narcissus, when you designed this project, did you rely on your past experience with designing to the floodplain standards or the interpretations?
I did. The goal is, it was the first project that I ever brought through for a work session, and I worked closely with John at that time. I knew that it was a prominent structure, and I knew that, and you guys probably recall,
Yeah.
but I did come to you guys. It was very beneficial for me regarding that. Interestingly, in the memo, it said in the floodplain, and the fact that I'm getting a variance to have a livable basement. So it was never brought up regarding flood vents, et cetera, which I've done on all the projects that have been in the floodplain. I've always been used to having it addressed at HARC regarding that, but I was very used to what the town required at the time. It was basically just make sure that the mud flows that way or it goes this way, and then add your flood vents inside and out. So it was the hydrostatic pressure to not build up inside the house and raise it, right? So that was what I've done for all my projects in town. For this one, the fact that, and I was kind of proud, to be honest with you, of leaving the house exactly where it was. So had I known that that was an issue, either from the building department or HARC, I would have definitely addressed it.
So I'm trying to still understand what staff interpretation changes are requiring this house to be lifted. So can you shed any light on what has changed in your?
So in my experience, it's very interesting because I think what it's a matter of is an enforcement and how much the letter of the law is being interpreted, right?
Which of the three variables changed?
I'm
asking you, which of the three variables changed in this calculation?
So in my opinion, the description of the variance is what, for my project, the reason that I feel the floodplain was not brought up, the floodplain was not brought up to be 3 feet above the ground, which I've had projects before that was brought up, right? On Main Street, raising it 43 inches. I believe it's because it was highly rated and leaving it was part of that variance. So if it's a contributing structure and if you're leaving it where it is, we're going to give you approval to have livable basement, to have your floor, etc., and protect it, restore it,
With
protect
wet
it.
proofing,
What's that?
with wet proofing, flow through, not dry proofing.
That wasn't brought up. So the dry proofing and wet proofing, and again, it's not like I've done projects here recently, but before it was the flood vents. The flood vents were the only thing that were being addressed. And I was even told by somebody who went to some conference, they said that Telluride is one of the biggest purchaser of flood vents, and it was a bit of a joke that we're 9,000 feet. So,
But flood vents, I'm trying to get to the why we're raising the house.
we're raising the house because I'm required to comply.
No, but
with
which of the
this.
three variables changed? The
In my
adjacent
opinion-
grade, the AO2
Well-
or the +1 versus your last 22 years? I want to know which of those three variables changed.
I don't know.
Station.
I think
You were the consultant. We
What's-
weren't. No,
no. I've always looked at the town to tell me how much I need to raise it. So if they said, "Look, here's your high grade, you need to bring it up this much," that's what I did. So when I brought in, this is again 13 years ago, and that was a significant raise. The floor was flat in the house, and I had to go 4.5 feet. So you imagine the impact on that, right? On a historic structure. And I had 2 steps in the floor. It was the long ways, but from the garage, a step down and so on, and it was able to follow it. But at the end, it was still 43 inches, and that was from the building department. Now, I've had different levels. I've also called the town and I said, there's a house. It was built in the 90s. It has a livable basement. Clients are looking to purchase it and remodel the basement. Can we do it? They said, no, absolutely not. You're in the floodplain. That's illegal. 5 years later, I went to the open house of the new people who bought it. They had redone it all beautifully.
Yeah.
So what is
Without a permit.
enforcement? I really don't know, but I'll tell you what, if you go through and start to check all these things, I know we discussed not looking backwards. So I can't really answer your question because the level of
you
enforcement.
just did what you were told to do and you didn't ask why.
I didn't ask why, because
Okay.
it's a battle that I don't have the weapons to fight here.
Understood. That's enough.
Thanks, appreciate it.
So I think
No.
just on this particular project, you went back and studied the survey. I had another survey done that showed that what you were working off of originally wasn't that accurate. So we went from 20 some inches raising to 11.5.
They had a 3-inch difference in their survey because their spot elevation was more under the eave. I went against the building. So the only difference there wasn't that big, but I did adjust my floor because initially I had dropped it to give a ceiling height.
Yeah.
I raised it back up.
I understand that.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Good.
Not going backwards, but it definitely seems like, to Narcissus' point, there's been a lot of variation over time. And what we are trying to do at this point in time is just have a standard, dependable, here's the process, it's fair amongst all applicants, this is how this works, these are the standards, they're spelled out, same for all applicants. If there's something in there that is challenging, all you have to do is speak with me with your engineers and we'll work something out. We're very solutions driven. This is the basic standards. Tell me if you're in a unique situation. We've been working one by one with each applicant, but things should have been calculated the same throughout time. And there should have been standards over time. I don't want to go backward and say, oh, this might have been missed. This was overlooked, something. I don't want to go there. I just want to say, this is where we are. This is how the code reads. We paid a lot of money to have really high level experts help us come up with, how do you make these residential habitable spaces that are below the flood protection elevation as flood-proof as possible if something happens? What is the best we can do given where we, town, are allowing these variances? I mean, perhaps in the past, like, we need to think through the process a little bit more and standardize that. And there are differences further back in time versus more recent versus, so we're just all going to be consistent.
I'm trying to understand what interpretation change that requires this house and the next project to move up. And I don't get a satisfactory answer from you of what.
All I can think of is maybe that 1 foot freeboard was not factored in during that review that was undergone. That's all I can think of in that
I want
case.
to guess on.
I don't know.
our
You're asking me to-
decisions Here, I think we need more information of why this is coming to us and why we're going to be asked to raise these homes.
Okay, let's ask any other questions? I have one left, but I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna hit it on the fly.
I have one question.
Hope you have one on the fly.
And Archison, help me out here. So was the addition also required to be raised? The addition that you're doing to the house?
They didn't differentiate between the two. Now, my floor in the historic house and the addition is the same.
Okay,
So they required that I raise my finished floor. Now, the consultant did share with me the slope calculation. So basically he said, look, you can take your high point and your low point, drive diagonal line, and then you can start stepping your floor. The problem with it is the width of the house is not the length of the house. So I can't really it doesn't really apply to what I'm trying to do because it wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So, my addition and my historic house allowed that. Now, the key point, and I want to just address this, the importance of it. There are some peripheral items, obviously, like the floor in the addition. I have a hard time discussing some of those because the main, like Stacy said, elephant in the room is this. Will you guys allow me to raise this historic structure 11.75? Now, if you do that with conditions on the other things, I feel like those are manageable, but I can't say that I've looked and hired consultants to do the flood proofing because if this isn't allowed, then the project's dead. So there's no further discussion on it. So that's why I can answer some of those as secondary questions.
Lisa, anything else?
no.
Stacy, you had something you were pondering?
I'm pondering, but I don't have any questions.
Okay. And again, we'll probably never have to have this discussion again. This is the first one. So when we get through this and I appreciate the staff's wanting to have consistency going forward, trust me. But I'm not sure, I am sure that the applicant didn't understand. Nobody on this board understands which variable change except for maybe the 1 foot freeboard. But I have one well, no, I'm going to save this for deliberation. So what my last question is, you've been very creative architect over the years, and we're at important crossroads here with this decision, which we all take seriously. Do you have anything else up your sleeve? I mean, you can't lower the ceilings by 6 inches and have 8 foot zero, probably. I don't know. But is there anything, combination of things you could do to get another 6 inches? And I'm only going back to the design guideline specific word, minimally, which we will talk about during deliberations. What does that mean? But is there anything you can think of where you might be able to get another 6 inches out of this? And
I
if
don't
you-
think I can get 6 inches out of it. My upper level framing is 9.5 inch LVLs. I can go to 7.25 LVLs. Basically, the whole floor is gonna be packed, but what I'm running into at that point is I don't have the drain slope to have a bathroom up there. So those are the issues. So that will give me another 2 inches.
Oh, I'm not looking for 2 inches.
Yeah, so 6 inches, I don't have anything.
Okay.
I wish I did.
Then one other follow-up question on Elites is, it was a good one, because, when we ruled on this historic house, we approved the addition because it would be subordinate. And maybe that's why she asked, but now that's why she asked if it's going up or staying down.
I can leave it down. If you guys feel
Well,
like
wait a
leaving the
minute.
addition down and you wanna
Maybe,
make it a
maybe you're
condition,
directed by the floodplain to raise the addition. How you gonna just raise the house and not raise the addition?
Do you have
According to-
habitable space?
what's that?
You have habitable space under the addition?
I do,
Well, hell.
but,
Well,
but.
then you gotta raise it.
So you guys, can I just say this? If that's a topic that is important to you guys, I don't have a problem stepping the addition down.
I don't think it'd help.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any last questions? If not, we'll go to the public.
Anyway, Christopher, just quickly, I have done a lot of these raises and it has changed over the years. Back when Narcissus was referring to, I have 2 houses that was raised 42 inches for us to meet the flood fence. That situation went away, and then it was on HARC's decision from that point on, when the building department took our flood fence away, for you guys to determine the height of what we would allow. And that was really based on any site condition and if the road was raised or if it was in a hole. So there's been, when we're talking about all these variables, none of them's really changed. They haven't been enforced for our historical houses. And so all 3 of these kind of are coming back as a new thing. This is exactly what we did 15 years ago, but we had a different calculation that made it so high. We have 411 West Colorado is 4 feet above West Colorado. And all these new variables from the floodplain are at least limiting everything down to 1 foot, 12 inches. Narcissus project here, he didn't come in for a raise and now he's asking for 11.75, and we always are allowing 12-inch raise to get them in a better position to protect the historic house. Anyway, so just to answer your question, Matt, all these variables have changed because they haven't been implemented on any historical project since that whole floodplain, the flood vents went away. And that was decided by the building department, that we no longer needed them and FEMA was never going to back us anyway. That's
Okay.
it.
Thank you. Yes. Come on up and please read your name in the record again.
Sherry Harvey. I didn't come up with a cohesive list of things to say, so I'm just gonna recite these sentences that I thought of as I was listening to all
Can you
the
read it
discussion.
the mic a little more? Thank you.
Okay, I was on the board 13 years ago, and I remember the discussion about stepping the levels of the white trash house. And I think we had bigger problems concerning the removing of the siding to allow for a vapor barrier that should have been enforced instead of the raising discussion. I do want to say that corner lots have a greater sensitivity. Can you hear me, Mark? You're looking at me like you can't hear what I'm saying.
I'm listening. Yeah, I know. I think just speak into the mic. At first I didn't.
Okay. So, yes, I was talking about the vapor barrier at the white trash house and then the sensitivity of corner lots and their visibility. Changing the height of the house, manipulating the grade, changes the setting to the pedestrian, which is obviously one of the key components and drivers in the design guidelines. We have always raised houses minimally. And I do remember, for instance, 330 West Columbia discussed changing the height for months and years over 3 different architects, and the number of steps to the front porch. I think what has come out of that project is more than compliant and commendable. And that's also on a corner lot 1 block down from this site. So it affects not only the setting, which is defined as the part in the Park Service as crucial to maintain the characteristics of a contributing structure, but I do think that putting the design guidelines first should be a priority in this decision. Since we're negotiating with ourselves and especially a warmer, drier climate, and we have more creek retention in place, enforcing the guidelines should be at the forefront of this discussion. So, right, the other point I wanted to say that still seems contradictory, but has always been the Telluride way, is that raising houses and allowing underground basements seems contradictory. And how can we pick and choose what we're going to take from this floodplain expert? Wouldn't it have been nice if one of these third-party consultants actually came from the Park Service and had an expert in preservation? I do think that should contribute to this discussion as staff makes these changes. And then again, as we continue to raise these houses, it changes the whole streetscape. There's no public comment that I know of allowed in a discussion about staff making these changes. But I would say, why are we negotiating with ourselves instead of putting the energy into an updated historical survey? Imagine the number of houses that we will have downgraded from contributing if a surveyor comes in and sees the dramatic altering of settings and heights, entrances and the porches, and then the setbacks. So understanding where we are with that, so the changes we've already made, I think should be in front of this discussion and money spent on consultants. But I know that's not the venue for this, but I do think that that's just a response from what I heard tonight. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else? Electronically, you're out there virtually, if you'd raise your hand. If you'd like to speak? Piper? Nothing. Okay, yep, go ahead.
Chris Hawkins, Alpine Planning. When I was planning director for 5 years, you'd take the base and add one. That was the standard rule. We knew that's what I've advised clients throughout. Where that got dropped or not, we've actually used that before in past applications to justify raising houses. And I appreciate the sensitivities and what Sherry was talking about. My bigger, I guess, comment is having a forum where this can be discussed and it's on the agenda and people know. So, because this is big for people, right? And so to make a decision for something that's not on the agenda tonight, and I'm not trying to hold up Chris's applications or Chris's, I think you can act on those as you see fit, but going forward, it'd be nice to have some community engagement on this topic and have a meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and seeing no other public comment, I think we'll go to deliberations.
Does Narcis want to respond?
Oh, you want to respond and rebut?
No, I think it's been exhausted. So
Okay.
you guys have heard every different side and every, as have I. So
Okay. Thank
take
you.
the comments.
All right. So, I'd like to share just two things before we do detailed deliberations and go right down the line. In hindsight, this is probably a good one for our first one, to have a site walk and really visualize context of the neighborhood. And we've seen some pictures and so forth, but 2 points that I would make about this is, I don't know if you can see this for the public and everybody, the solid line is what I was given to adjudicate, and that's why we're here. The little thin line above, the thin line above represents what I was shown at 20, actually it was 20 inches, I think, and now we're asking for 1.5, I'm going to call it 2 steps roughly change. But the part on the condition number 2, that bothers me is there's only just less than 6 feet to the arena and that's one of the reasons stated for passage, is to try to raise the grade. And I think, or Bob asked about that, raise the grade between the street and this so that you disguise it as, oh, it really didn't go up. But there's a 4 or 3 foot fall off on the south side of the lot. And to me, this looks like a mound. Then we're going to put the house on top of this mound, even if it's only 11.75 inches taller. But as you could see in the photos, and if you did walk by, it's, well over 2 feet above the street. The second and last thing that's in the public domain, so there's no need to research this, is that the Colorado, well, I already said that the Colorado law allows flexibility all the way down. You can use no elevation, partial elevation. You can get rid of the 1 foot freeboard if the town changes their land use code. It's not mandatory. And I thought Colorado law was really kind of taking precedent over this with the town's frustration with FEMA and the world's and the whole nation's frustration. And I feel bad about that. But I do want to enter the record what's in the public domain, because as I already knew, just from talking to people who've been around here for years, not about this particular project, but NARCH has stated, and there were several homes that had some foundation damage in 69 and 05. I mean, there were no houses floating down the road. But the real basis here is life and safety. Okay. And in 1914 at 12:57 p.m., when on July 27th, 1914, when the cloudburst came, there are 5 reasons why, and these are all in the current AO2 designation. And so the most important thing that was said here today, and Kristen acknowledged that they're going to try to go and remap this flood bed, because it just is flawed. It does not reflect reality. And as a licensed professional engineer practicing for 45 years, I get this. The 5 reasons that it could never happen again, but I'm shocked that even though the 1914 flood was the most debris, a 10-foot wave of debris on the street, this house, which is sitting on these pile of rocks, foundation, that's what anchors this, didn't move an inch. And now we're going to adjudicate if something could happen again to create life and safety issues. So number one, that July 27th day was an anomaly because there was the reservoir, as most people know here, the dam broke at the reservoir just below Liberty Bell Mine. The dam was 10 to 20 times the effect of the rainfall that day, 10 to 20 times. Just a second, I'll finish. 1969, the flood was altered to the southwest, this channel, even though this house did not get damaged during the flood in 1914. 69 moved the flood channel even further to the west, southwest, away from this home. Number 3, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has records, and so does the museum. And the actual peak flow that day, that fateful day in 1914, was 0.2 inches per hour. Over 50 times since 1914, there's been more rain, up to almost 1.5 inches of rain per hour. And, but it was clearly the dam, which is not there, that caused the problems with houses going down the road. We've completed the infill now. The post-1914 foundations are, usually pinned pilings, except for a few of these historic houses, again, and including this historic house, which never had any flow that damaged it to begin with. So we can all offer opinions about what that means, but the point is the new flood mapping, when it's done, I hope will reflect reality and not be relying on the AO2 if the most becomes AO1 and by the way, the 1 foot freeboard is a safety factor calculation. And in my engineering career, if you're a structural engineer, and especially on a commercial building, we have multiple lives at stake. And I'm going back to life and safety here. You put in a 10 to 20% safety factor. This 1 foot represents a 50% life factor. And by the way, in the homes that are in the AO1, it's 100% safety factor. And quote, in case the base calculations are wrong. That seems absurd to have this freeboard, which could be changed by the town council as part of our land use code. But with that said, I'll just leave you with the thought that we're trying to adjudicate something here based on a flood map, which my belief is does not reflect reality because of the 5 reasons I just espoused. That cannot happen again. It could not happen tomorrow morning from an engineering perspective. And it's almost like, we've all seen a lot of extremism throughout the country, but, with life and safety issues, let's just take St. Patrick's Church right down the way from me. That because of all the shootings that have, risked people's lives throughout this country, that, all of a sudden a consultant recommends that we put in passcodes and key locks onto this church. Well, to me, it's analogous to one person died in some mud debris in the worst flood ever. It was due to a dam in 1914 breaking. And now we're picking a more stringent variance than what we've had for the last 30, or interpretation, I should say, of the last 32 years. I think there's ways forward here, but I just wanted to state the fact that this house never moved and it was the worst day in history. But that's a perspective that you can get from looking at the history. So with that, we'll open it up to any deliberations, thoughts about this project.
Well, I'm concerned if we approve this, for it to come up 11.75 inches, however long later down the road, they go in and do a survey, it's updated, and it didn't have to come up that much. What have we done to this historic house that we're creating? Will that change?
Go ahead, Kristen, on this topic.
I just want to make sure that we reset to like where we are today. We have this AO map, like we have our flood zone map. It's what we have to work with. We have the code, land use code, building code, floodplain regulations. They're what we have to work with, like in the present. That's the map. That's the code. We are looking into remapping and code revisions, those kinds of things. The thing that we do have as flexibility is that variance process. But what I want to be mindful of is these applicants, their projects cannot move forward right now to building permit. So you're thinking about, we don't want to put off the decision on their projects to a further out in time where we might map again. And,
Okay.
you know, I want to be mindful of the present conditions and what we're deciding within.
Okay. Andrew, go ahead and continue though, if you have a final thought. Let's just go down the line. Alita, thoughts? You don't have to talk about a vote yet, but just get thoughts because this is a heavy topic and then we'll.
My thoughts specifically on the height of the building, because I'm gonna go back to the processes and whatever we've been talking for the past 1 hour, is that I think that the addition should not be moved up unless required by the building permit. The code enforcers, and if we have to build, I mean, the height, ugh.
Well,
Okay,
can I?
you can continue later. All right.
And I'll continue later on the
Okay.
rest, but I don't think that the addition should be moved up.
Okay.
I just think
Thank you.
though that if he's putting a basement under that addition, which I understand you are, correct?
Correct.
The same conditions apply. It has to be, I'm assuming it has to be.
The floor has
flood-proof
to
and-
move up, but the
It's
roof
doable.
doesn't.
What?
The
whole
floor
thing
has
doesn't
to
have
move
to
up,
move
but
before
the whole
ground
thing
level.
doesn't.
Oh, well,
It can move up within.
I think we're getting beyond what we're
Yeah.
Is that why you're
supposed to be doing.
If you guys open it back to the applicant, I can answer that question fairly quick. So
I'll open it back up and then I'll have to open up to public comment and then I'll have to come back here.
then if you guys want me, I can answer.
Just
that
briefly,
question.
please.
So the grade is low where the addition is. And based on that slope, if we drop the floor of the addition, it's still gonna be 3 feet above that adjacent grade. So to Alita's point, leaving the addition where it is works. I can work with that. It's the
Okay.
main house.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment on this particular question? Because this is the only new thing we brought up. Okay. Out there electronically? Bob, questions or?
How many more questions?
I'm sound like a broken record here, but I'm still not hearing detailed explanation of what changed the interpretations. When we make motions here, end of our motions, we say this motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at the public hearing. I don't see any evidence of why we should move this house up. So I think this project should be continued so that staff can give us a detailed explanation of what changed in the interpretation of the floodplain codes, regulations, or policies. Because this is all brand new to me. It's a lot to absorb in one setting here, and I'm still not getting an answer on what changed, why we should be lifting this house.
Okay. Stacy?
I am sensitive to the concerns Matt just articulated. However, in this case, for this project, the fact that even with the 11 and 3/4 inch raise, it's 2 foot 2 under the maximum. I would be prepared to approve it. We've been given maybe not every answer you want or all the information I want also. I'm hopeful that we get that and that it's presented to us maybe more
Soon.
thoroughly. I'd like to stay focused on this item, but my fear is that this is gonna get handled. These are being handled in the public because they're caught between an approval and a permit. My fear is that these will then be handled in behind closed doors
By this staff?
by someone. It's already said that this will be handled administratively.
Yep.
These are only coming before us and they didn't come before us previously because they were handled administratively.
You will see the height raises always. It's per the the land use code. Like you cannot raise a historic house
Okay.
without it going to usually it's the HARC
But
chair
the
that
discussion of the why, again,
the discussion of the why. I'm happy, let me say this again. I'm very happy to meet with any of you anytime in any fashion that you'd like. I presented in front of the realtors, like I've been going around and giving updates on this topic. Happy to do that
I've been
anytime.
more
I'm
times
not
this.
clear on what you feel you haven't heard, because I've been trying to say as
Let me-
much as I
let me say
can.
it again. What
Sure.
is a different interpretation from the previous interpretation that is requiring these homes to be raised, whatever, 11 1/4 inches?
I can't speak to whether it was overlooked 3 years ago in terms of where it should have been.
You
Maybe.
can't tell me, but
I
think we need to
can't. I
have
wasn't-
staff Tell us.
I
what
wasn't
made the change.
here, and the staff that would have reviewed that project are not
Okay.
here. Um,
Let's get the final comments here. We're in deliberations with Sherry.
Yeah, I just wanted to put in a vote, and I know this isn't necessarily the venue for it, but with regard to the decision by the town whether or not to remap, do the remapping of the floodplains, it does seem to be sort of another closed door type of decision, but there are, and you said there's pros and cons to both. It seems like the pros, especially if you're thinking about life and safety being of primary importance, would be to have an accurate flood map. And that may mean that, certain homes now in the AO2 area are now AO1 or not, but it also may mean that other homes, maybe in the western edge of town, unfortunately, which is where I live, maybe even, more of a flood depth than they are. But the important thing is that it's accurate. And so that, having an accurate floodplain may bring some of these prior projects that maybe aren't in compliance now into compliance. But it also would be good to have that education going forward for all the other areas of town that maybe now aren't at that AO2 level. That also would have, of course, effects on people's insurance premiums, their flood insurance and whatnot, increasing or decreasing accordingly. So I just wanted to put in a vote for getting those flood maps updated ASAP.
Okay.
I have one more, sorry.
Yes.
I'm not super on board with number 2, the condition of mounding to maintain the relationship with the historic ground surface. It seems unnatural to me to start mounding up 1 to 2 feet of dirt around these historic homes. I think the existing relationship to the sidewalk, to the street it's important as well.
I went and looked at this project and the grade right at this northern side, the center where it looks like the high point is, the sod, the grass looks about a foot below the sidewalk and it looks like it drains into the building. So they're gonna need to drain away from the building and swale a bit. So I think that I don't think you're gonna get a mounding condition.
Okay, so that's an opportunity to mitigate
Yeah.
the raise.
Yes, it is.
That wasn't necessarily presented, so.
And I think it also talks about to the greatest extent possible, taking into consideration site-specific factors.
Okay.
I think I agree. They don't have a lot of space to mound up next to this building. And I think it would look horrible.
But just to read the condition, the relationship of the finished floor to the grade should be retained. It's not just talking about the north side, the south side as well, the east and west sides. I don't know how you do that on the south side. Again, I didn't visit the site, but I used to walk my dogs by it when I had them. I think the south side yes, the south side is already fairly steep. I don't think there's an opportunity without boulder retainage, or I could be wrong. But again, that's information that we haven't been provided to consider. So
I don't know how you'd rewrite it, but
I'm going to take us back to the guidelines. Okay, so this is it. All right, I'm going to get ready to vote. But the guidelines specifically say, as Kristen has mentioned, the sections or previously did, but preserve a historic structure in its original location when feasible, with respect to height as well as relationship to finished grade. Number 2 is just what we've been talking about. There's 6 foot a yard to do this, infill to make it, to disguise it like it never got raised. It says changing the grade of the site adjacent to the building to permit development of a lower grade or below grade is not appropriate if it would be visible from the street. And we keep talking about the front porch. But let me tell you, when you walk on Galena and you see this thing raised another foot, if you were to have walked there, you would see that it's going to be obtrusive and look like an anomaly. Condition or policy 4 on page 40 is, here's the word. Okay, the historic house may be minimally raised if deemed necessary for its preservation, and these circumstances could include floodplain or relationship to the house and the grade that's been changed due to a street level change flood. And I will tell you, we need to not listen to these other houses that were raised 2, 3, 4 feet. There were specific reasons for streets that, like Main Street and Columbia, like this next project, that were raised 2 feet, which then created a reason to go back to what the historic character of the neighborhood looked like. And that's why we've raised some of those houses. This is not that case on this historical street, which has not been changed in the elevation. And the last thing I'll say is, we have been so ardent in our protection of the guidelines with respect to window wells. And what I understood from this conversation is that these window wells, which are the life and safety issue, right? Escape in case of fire. And by the way, if it's dry proofed, I'm not sure a 12-year-old kid can even open that thick window, but whatever. We cannot approve something that's going to have above ground on an historic contributing house. We don't even allow them anywhere near the street. It under porches is the past precedent over 11 years, or maybe in the rear of the yard. We have never allowed one of these overground, and that is part and parcel of what we're voting on by raising this up.
You're anticipating an amendment, another amendment to address window well.
Well,
because they're not addressed here.
I think it's part and parcel to raising the house. But
Chris,
would you say?
and that was
probably should.
staff
Well, they
decision.
cannot, see, this is the problem. They cannot be above the ground and visible. And then what happens? They can't have a basement. So
there to go.
And that's a whole other, that would basically preclude.
I mean, we can't approve this unless we know all aspects, including the window well treatment and the new shafts that are going to be above the ground and where they are. I just don't know how we could do that. And
Staff can review those
Yeah, I know.
as insubstantial amendments.
I think this board
To the
decided they're gonna
CA.
rule on that.
What's that?
I
Oh,
think this board, I get the feeling they would like to rule on that.
those are,
Leave it for later.
those are insubstantial amendments.
Well,
That would
it's part
just
and
be,
parcel of this approval, raising the house and raising the window well tax, unless somebody just wants to let go of it.
If it's not being asked for as part of this application, that it's not part of what's being considered here. So all we're considering right now is whether we'll allow this to be raised between 11 and 12 inches. That is,
Knowingly ignore something that's a part and parcel of the historic guidelines that they don't allow this, then we're not doing our job to approve it.
no one's approving it or disproving it tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something to be addressed later if it comes up. Tonight, all we're talking about is the height.
Okay, all right, then I'm gonna go with number 4 on page 40, minimally. My 11 years, minimally meant 4 to 6 inches. Unless the street level had changed. I know of no exception whatsoever unless the street level changed. This street level has not changed. And if you're worried about life and safety, even if you don't believe this is really an A01, and we'll find out in the survey, this house didn't move in 1914. So I cannot vote for something that's beyond minimal based on the historic moves of this board, 4 to 6 inches, unless the street was raised. So I'd like to hear any final discussion.
Hey,
If not-
Mark, sorry for being argumentative. I think for me, that's a narrow interpretation of the word minimal. For me, minimal means the minimum required to be compliant with X.
It doesn't say the minimal amount to comply. It says minimally. I went through this too.
Okay.
I struggled with it. Because if
think
it did say the minimal.
The
amount, I would
applicant has
agree with you.
demonstrated that 11.75 is the minimum that's required to comply.
But we're to adjudicate, if it said the minimal amount to accommodate the floodplain, I would 100% agree to you. It just says raise minimally. But that isn't, and it's a may provision. May, not shall. So, is there any other discussion? Not, I'd like to make a motion. And Matt, do you want to make a motion or do you want me?
I think I want to make a different motion than you. I want a motion to continue this and get more information from staff.
Um,
You want to try your motion first?
I'd probably make a
no,
different.
I'll concede to you. Let's try it unless we have friendly amendments and we can see where we get to as a board.
Any more discussion or comment, or should I try?
Okay.
We've discussed. Okay. I make a motion to move to continue to the July 15th HARC meeting with the following condition. It's only one condition, HARC staff to provide a detailed explanation on what interpretation of the floodplain codes, regulations, and or policies changed to require the structure to be raised to come into compliance, to come into floodplain compliance.
We'll gotta have a second before we ask for friendly amendments.
Like I don't get a second.
No, I'll second it.
Okay.
But I'd like to see if there's any friendly amendments. I mean, it's important to, your motion is clear of what you're asking for.
So just to be clear where we are, Matt made a motion, Mark, you seconded?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at the friendly amendment stage. Okay.
Yeah, we're just seeing if there's any friendly amendments.
Okay.
Which I always try to encourage. I'm not sure we need an amendment to justify anything further. I was considering suggesting, and this, feedback from staff would be based on the fact that this 1914 flood did not harm this house. And since then, many conditions have changed to lessen the risk even further, but maybe we don't need that as a justification.
I think I have a very specific question I want to answer to be able to determine, is this the only option for us to allow this house to move forward with permit or not?
Yeah. And that's why I was trying to, and so let me condense it and just see if it flies. If it doesn't, it's no problem. I would like to add a friendly amendment that would read as follows: the feedback from the staff regarding the specific questions and in this amendment should be looked at in the light of the fact that in the 1914 flood, this house was not harmed. And since then, there's been significant changes to lessen the risk of life and safety on this house.
I don't want to ask staff to conjecture on whether or not That just seems to complicate what I'm asking for.
Okay,
So.
I'll go away.
Okay.
okay. So,
So we're basically just gonna ask them to give us more information and then
So we can look at it
Continue.
specifically
and
this
while
one,
we're,
yeah.
while we're
Specific to
being
that.
asked to.
So we'll start down here. I guess Andrew, you're first.
How do I vote?
We're voting.
Yeah.
We have a
Andrew,
second.
yes.
Bob, yes.
Mark, yes.
Matt, yes.
Stacy, no.
Okay. All right.
Thank you,
See you in
guys.
July.
May I have a point of clarification? What information have you not been provided with that would allow you to decide on this project?
The
I'm not
specific
clear.
change on this lot, in this case of the three variables.
So the specific change
Because
is,
32 years, this would have been approved and now it's not.
may I answer that question? I thought I had very
You said
clearly.
The free board might have changed.
The calculation must have been done incorrectly because it has not changed. It's
You-
highest adjacent
What the
grade.
Calculation must have, we need more information because we don't have any concrete information on what you're saying, the interpretation.
I
You say
don't
nothing
think,
changed, but then the interpretation changed enough for us to come here and be asked to raise these.
so I don't know what my predecessors did, but I can say that it's just a fact that that's how you calculate the flood protection elevation per our code. And bringing that first floor elevation up to that height is what is necessary for this project to proceed. So it's very black and white. There isn't more information like that. That is the fact
Well, we
of the
had a motion
matter.
that carried, but I would welcome specificity. If you would like to even revisit it individually with some board members between now and then, whatever, because you offered. And so that'd be great.
Sure, I'm always happy to have conversation, but
Yeah, and just to clarify, that individual meeting wouldn't be about any
No,
particular
not about this
application.
project.
It would be more about the floodplain regulations and what
happy to do.
more
that.
broadly interpretations, might have changed. Mhm.
Once she finds the answer, it could be a broad statement. Here's how we're newly interpreted. This consultant is newly interpreted versus 32 years in a row with our building department. So.
Yeah, I just
okay.
wanted to make sure the public understood that this was not.
Okay, we need to move on. So I'm going to go, I think this will be much briefer. Let's try 566 West Columbia, CA1, consideration application for minor scale amendment to CA 25033 that does not constitute a vested site specific plan inside the THLD per land use code 7203 A3D3 and land use code 7212. I again elevated this to the board for the same reason stated previously. Legal description is lot 24, block 9, West Telluride, accommodations, replat. Recording 13123 at 4798838, address is 566 West Columbia. It's an historic residential zone. Owner David Korn and Korn Kristen and Korn David and the Kristen Family Trust. Good. Applicant is Shift Architects, Christine Papar, and staff member Christian Clothier.
Sorry about this. It's taking me seconds to look at the next one. Oh, here it is. Sorry. Found it. Nope. Here we go. Is it? Okay, start at the beginning. A lot of this you have already heard from the prior project, so I'll go even more quickly through it so that I don't take up your time. We went through the overview for this project. You're familiar with it. It's two contributing structures. You know the history. This is 566 West Columbia. The summary of the CA amendment request. The original certificate of appropriateness was issued on 4/10/26. The applicant subsequently prepared and submitted an application for building permit review on 4/27/26. The property is located in flood zone AO1. During the building permit review process, the project was determined not to be compliant with floodplain codes, regulations, and policies. In order to come into compliance with Telluride floodplain codes, regulations, and policies, the applicant is requesting consideration of a CA amendment for a minor scale alteration to raise the primary structure, which is contributing, inclusive of the new connector addition, the minimum amount necessary to raise the first floor elevation to the flood protection elevation. Proposed CAAs that involve minor scale activities require a public hearing at the HARC chair level. In speaking with the HARC chair prior to agendizing this item, the HARC chair requested that this be elevated to the full HARC board. Concurrently, the applicant's requesting administrative review and approval of the variance to specific floodplain regulations for contributing supporting structures pursuant to Land Use Code 8626. The variance is administratively approved with the following conditions. The applicant must demonstrate that the first floor elevation is at or above the flood protection elevation, which requires the requested HARC approval to raise the contributing primary structure the minimum amount necessary. The property owner must sign and record the property owner indemnification release and waiver, and the applicant must comply with residential floodproofing standards below the flood protection elevation. The applicant has agreed to comply with conditions 2 and 3. Approval from HARC is required in order for the applicant to meet condition 1. So the applicant demonstrated per their surveyor that their highest adjacent grade is 8763.1, which was confirmed by this stamped letter on 5/7/26. So for your 4/10/26 HARC approval for the CA, the existing first floor elevation was 8764. HARC approved an increase in 11¼ inches to 8764, 11¼ already. So that's part of your first CA approval. HARC approved, raising the primary structure as I indicated. So now the proposed additional amount to raise the structure, again, the existing first floor elevation is 8764. And the proposed first floor elevation, which is inclusive of the 11¼ inches you already approved, plus an additional 5 inches per the applicant's request. So the applicant is requesting to raise the primary structure an additional 5 inches. We did talk back and forth because we did some further looking at the plan submitted as staff to try to look for the minimum amount that could be requested and make sure that we were at that minimum with that 5 inches. And we didn't have a chance to have one final meeting on that point. So where we are as staff, yes, we have determined that the minimum amount necessary to bring the FFE to the FP is an additional 3 inches. Staff would recommend raising an additional 3¼ inches just for an even number, which is 1¾ inches less than proposed. So that is the minimum. The rehabilitation standards we've already talked through, which of course, the design guidelines recognize that a historic structure may be minimally raised if deemed necessary for its preservation. The design guidelines also specifically state that location in the floodplain is one of the circumstances appropriate for consideration of raising a historic structure. And again, the minimum necessary would be bringing that first floor elevation to the flood protection elevation, which needs to be calculated correctly per the land use code, building code, floodplain regulations, etc. So in this instance, the property is located in the flood zone AO1. The applicant already received approval from HARC to raise the structure by approximately a foot, which is the 11¼ and is requesting to raise the primary structure, the minimum amount to bring FFE to FP. The relationship of, again, I'm putting this condition in each application with the caveat. So the relationship of the first floor to finished grade, you will see this in each of these applications, should be retained through grading, landscaping, post-construction to the greatest extent possible, taking into consideration site-specific factors such as existing topography. So what I was envisioning with that condition, which was in the previous as well, is to allow flexibility for staff to work with the applicant to, as best as possible, reduce the visual impact of the raising of the structures, the minimum amount necessary to meet the floodplain regulations and to receive a building permit. So I tried to keep it very open-ended, but it is one of the design guidelines is to be thinking about this. And I feel that that's something that could be addressed with staff work with the applicant in both of the projects, again, to the greatest extent possible. So staff findings and analysis, already talked about what you've already approved. So already went over the highest adjacent grade and the flood protection elevation, which is the pre-project highest adjacent grade plus the zone AO flood depth plus freeboard. and the freeboard is 1 foot per land use code 8624A. Nothing has changed, same as always. The applicant is requesting to raise the primary structure inclusive of the addition and connector. The minimum amount necessary to raise the first floor elevation to the flood protection elevation. Staff worked with the applicant with review and guidance from a third-party floodplain consultant to determine the necessary steps to bring the project into compliance with floodplain codes, regulations, and policies, including the floodproofing and all the other aspects of their variance. So raising the structure by the 3.05 inches is the minimum necessary to allow the project to proceed as approved previously by HARC to building permitting. Approval from HARC will allow the project to proceed pursuant to CA 25033, subject to the conditions of the variance. So staff recommendation to raise it, again, just an even number, 3 1/4, but you could go with the 3.05, which is 1 3/4 inches less than proposed. The applicant expressed that they're flexible in this discussion, because again, we didn't have that opportunity to get aligned on the minimum that was necessary. Based on a review of the application submittals, we've had multiple meetings with the applicant, the third-party consultant. The applicant has been very gracious in those meetings and working with town to just work through this project process as quickly as possible. Staff recommend approval of raising the structure with the following condition, which I already went over. I provided a proposed motion and I went very quickly through that because it's very similar to the prior similar discussion. And I guess that's it for now. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? No questions? Let's hear from the applicant.
Hi, Christopher Parr, Shift Architects. Yes, we are in agreement with the 3 1/4. There was a miscommunication when we were rushing through all this versus finished floor, top of gypcrete, top of TGIs. Anyway, so we're happy to move it down to the 3 1/4. So we're asking for a 3 1/4 raise. I do think, can I share my screen? This project is a little different. Columbia is raised extremely high. I want to say it's over 18 inches, and the neighboring property was also, sorry. I don't know if you guys went out to the site, but you can see from some of our photos, even with this 3 1/4 inch raise, our house is still in a hole. We are more than 18 inches still lower than the sidewalk of Columbia. And
So what-
3 1/4 inches would make the building department happy. And we put in for permit probably April-ish.
And
Yeah, is that right? Yeah, so we put in and it came back and it was really silent for a really long time from staff as they were trying to work this out. I do think that we have ignored these floodplain options for probably the last 7 to 8 years. And had allowed HARC to decide the height based on each individual, which I'm not opposed to, but in this case, I think it's a little different story, and 3 1/4 inch gets us through this process. And again, the first level is still over 18 inches below the sidewalk.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna keep going in unless you guys, and I don't know. Our recent changes, we have a new building inspector.
he's not involved in this.
Oh, he's not?
process. No.
Okay.
Mm-mm. It's the building official who's the floodplain
Okay.
administrator who should be.
Anything else? Or are you ready for questions? Okay, questions of the applicant?
And just to confirm, Chris, even with the raise, you're still below the
Yeah, right
25
over
foot.
2 feet, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Confirming that.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's it.
Other questions? Okay, we'll hear from the public. Public comment? Go ahead and read your name into the record.
Dan Daly, and I'm with West Development, so I apologize. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, so my brain stem's a little worked listening to all this. I grew up in Wisconsin. I've renovated a number of old structures. I spent a year up on the Pearl River renovating a lodge from the 1900s. I spent a year. My partner, Joe Lynch, lives in Connecticut. He lives in a 100-year-old house. So we're up for these kind of things. I will say this about David Korn and his wife. These are probably the last people are going to take this on. This house, according to Corey Fortenberry, has had 3 different people try to renovate it. I mean, this house is about to fall down. So I think anything that can be done would be helpful. And I know that's not an argument, but if we want to protect this house, I think there has to be a little bit of some, compassion when it comes to the owners. So, thank you.
Thank you. Virtually, if you're out there, please raise your hand electronically. Piper, nobody?
No hands are raised.
I forgot to ask one question and then we can open it up for public comment, but it was an important question. That is, is there any need to raise this house more than 3 inches?
No, not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, okay, 3 1/4. Okay, sorry. Any public comment regarding 3 1/4 inches? Sorry to bring that up belatedly. Okay. I'm just gonna kick this off. If you didn't walk by again, can I ask that, let's see, there's 8, here's 2. And if there's, well, I'll ask it during board discussion. Okay, never mind. If you didn't do the site walk, this is down in this hole as described. Street was raised 2 feet. So therefore, condition number 2 is relevant. I'd appreciate it if we only use condition number 2, adjusting the grade if there's room to do it, not in a 6 foot between the street and this, which is going to look mounded. But all that said, this seems night and day difference. I welcome any input, but as we look at each of these individually, just so we're not misquoted, this one is a night and day different than what we just went through. Any discussion?
I agree.
Discussion?
Yeah, I agree too. There is still some concern about the window wells and the dry proofing, but these are on the side, the window wells for those.
I'm working with the fire department. Our window wells are safe, health and safety for our livable below grade, right? We all know that. And so I'm personally working with the fire department because I think it's gonna be an issue, which is why they haven't been changed. And this project allows them to we have a little bit more space, but I'm working with them to consider what they're gonna do when we have a 3-foot setback. And you do get to follow the grade. So they'll never be as high as the first level because we always have them back from the front elevation. So they will be staggered. But Scott Heidergott's working in what that means for them in the tight 3-foot radius spaces to get up and over, right? So our fire department has to be able to circulate a house or a building.
So does that
some
mean,
capacity? And so
does that mean they will not be 2 feet above the
that
ground?
is correct.
But they'll
He
be
doesn't
further
want
back, okay.
to go up a ladder,
Got it.
across,
Thank you.
down a ladder, get a kid, or then out the other
Right.
side and get a ladder. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
And for these aspects of flood proofing, this happens all along with building permit review. There are certain things that are needed to come into building code compliance. If it's an insubstantial application, it's a staff level review. So those minor adjustments to those details, if it's something like raising a house, it's minor, it would go to HARC chair, it can get elevated. For those reviews, certainly if staff sees that there's a reason to elevate to the chair, we would, but we just need to get things building code compliant, and life safety things like egress are part of that process.
Yeah.
Yes, so we're working with
But,
them.
I don't have any other question, but just to
Great.
clarify something you just said.
Sure.
So on these full historic rated homes, and knowing that our design guidelines do not allow the window well egress to be above ground currently and or seen from the street, are you saying that on these historic homes that it will come to the chair as many in substantial do for my final sign off?
Staff makes the determination of whether to elevate if it's necessary, if we feel it's necessary. But staff, I mean, this is one of those things where it's a building code issue, just like flood vents, things like that, that we have to work through through the building
But it
permitting
is a HARC issue
process.
because of the visuals, which.
If it kicks up, if it scales up to needing a HARC review, certainly.
You mean if it's above ground,
If
which makes it HARC's.
if it scales
concern.
up, so it depends on what it scales to, what
But if
needs
it's
to be
above
done.
ground, you'll bring it to the chair at least?
I have to look through the code and just see how it scales and whether it's insubstantial or minor. If it's minor, it comes before the chair. Absolutely.
And the building, sorry, we've been, for the last 5 years have made them 12 inches above ground.
Okay,
They're already,
Yeah.
yes.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other, there's no other questions? Okay. No? Okay. So, who wants to make a motion?
I'll do it.
No discussion?
Well, I asked.
Any
for
discussion?
Oh, sorry,
You want to say something?
I was contemplating, no.
Okay.
I have more of a statement than discussion.
Oh.
I have no problem with this home being raised 3 1/4 inches. I was fine with it being raised in the initial review. It's in a hole, clean it up.
Mhm.
It's a small, low house already. I have no problem with it going up. I still have the same issue of not being clear what has changed. So I will probably vote no, but
I can respond to that if you want. I think maybe what you're looking for, and I will put this on the record, although I would rather my staff member speak himself. I feel uncomfortable stating this, but it seems like what you need to be able to move forward. Our building official, floodplain administrator should be reviewing these projects through pre-HARC, should be noting what's in the flood zone, and should be doing the calculation and bringing the first floor up to the flood protection elevation as part of that review. That should be coming up as it comes into review. The previous project was 3 years ago, reviewed and approved. Again, as was mentioned, things have been done differently over time. Things seem to have been done more consistent with what we're talking about now before, and then there was this other thing in between. I don't know. But the best I can say is we will catch these moving forward. We need to address the ones that are in between that somehow we need to do the calculation per the code. That's where this is all coming from.
I don't want to keep having the circular conversation.
know if
but
that's
that
helpful.
First slide that you brought up, the first thing
Yeah.
you said is new information or new interpretation has come to the.
Yes,
facility.
so
I want to know.
our building official, I
Yes.
think, didn't know, perhaps. I want him to speak because I actually don't know this 100%,
That's-
but I
that's
think
fine, because that's why I'm asking it to be
Okay.
continued and you have time to go back to
Okay.
staff and talk to everybody.
he read
figure
the
out what's
code
going
when
on.
when
Okay.
things were raised to him, he went through the code and was like, oh no, and that's how it came to me.
Okay,
Yeah.
but anyway, I'm gonna make a comment. I respect your no vote. The only thing I would say, I'm leaning on 1A4, which can't be argued about the word minimal here, that minimally, I know by past precedent means less than 6 inches, and I'm gonna stick with that, and this is half of that. So minimal is good with me on this one, but that will be my personal vote, or reason for yes, I should say.
And you are approving though the 11 1/4 plus the 3 1/4. I mean, that's
What?
what you've already approved 11 1/4 to be on.
We raised it during the.
Yeah, you already have gone up 11 1/4 and now you're going another 3
3
1/4.
That's clear to me.
Minimal.
Clear to everybody.
Okay, I just want to make sure everyone's on the same
The
page.
minimal 3 inches. Okay, excuse me. All right,
Wouldn't you rather have?
Andrew, we're voting.
No, we haven't read the, I gotta read the motion.
I'm gonna make this.
I said.
I will, oh, bummer.
All right, I've been waiting.
All right, sorry to hold you up.
Okay. I move to approve certificate of appropriateness amendment number 1 for the contributing primary structure THAS 5SM.1728 at 566 West Columbia based on the staff memo dated June 17th, 2026 with the following conditions as stated. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held on June 17th, 2026, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. Revised plans incorporating conditions of approval shall be submitted within 60 days of this approval, or this approval becomes null and void. Unless otherwise indicated, the revised drawings submitted for a certificate of appropriateness must be a complete set with any changes to the drawings clouded and labeled. Any changes to the drawings beyond the conditions of approval may result in more than one submittal being required.
I would be proud to second that motion.
Okay, we have a second.
Now we vote.
Yeah.
Andrew,
Andrew, yes.
Bob, yes.
Mark, yes.
Matt, no.
Stacy, yes.
Okay.
I have a question. When did we decide to go this direction?
God, I don't know. Let's just try.
When you guys are virtual, you can't keep track of what direction we're supposed to go as it is, and now you're switching it up.
It's true.
gonna take a break.
Okay, all right, our last hearing item of the evening. Don't leave.
Oh, I'm not,
No, no, I mean, all the people.
I get to go.
Gosh. Is well, we have some continuances, but number 3 is 208 South Fur. Our site walk today. Large scale preliminary development consideration application for large scale preliminary new construction will contain 5,000 square feet or more of floor area per land use code 72032A1. Legal descriptions, south 5 feet of lot 6 and north half lot 8, block 23. 208 South Fur is the address. It's in the commercial zone district. Owner NIBA LLC, applicant Shift Architects, and staff member Michael Owen.
Mark, can I jump in? I have to recuse myself because of proximity to this project. Unfortunately.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.
And you don't have to come back for the continuances.
What continuances?
Just continue.
The next two.
Into that we.
The next 2.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay.
So they're, yeah, without discussion.
All right. Wait a minute, but Lisa, did she?
She, I think, went to the restroom.
Oh, okay, so her vote will now count as first alternate, okay. So here we go, Michael.
Good, okay. Mike Owen, Senior Historic Preservation Planner. I know it's getting late, so some of the information in this presentation was seen at the work session, so I'll try to go through some of that redundant information rather quickly, but I still just wanted it as part of the presentation. This is in the warehouse commercial treatment area. This is a preliminary large-scale development project. The HARC had a work session on April 15th. The applicant has revised their drawings following many of those comments during that work session. This is just a little site context. We have originally it was a supporting structure that was severely damaged in a fire. There were numerous hearings and attempts to save some of the building, but eventually HARC approved deconstruction, demolition of the structure for safety reasons. There's an existing development agreement in place. The staff will have, it was discussed briefly at the work session about the development agreement. Staff will have proposed language at a later hearing, so not today, but just mentioning that was discussed at the work session. Again, just for site context, here's an overview. Whoops. Again, this is just some of the background. So a CA was already approved for the reconstruction of the supporting structure that was destroyed by a fire. The work session, this is that building prior to the fire. This is a recent photo, just showing a little bit of the context with the tree. This is at the alleyway on West Pacific. This is just another view from that alleyway a little farther back. This is just a photo I took today. As you know, we had a site visit today at 3 o'clock that was recorded because this is preliminary large scale. There were tent poles to get a sense of the massing and orientation. Again, this is just another photo. The design guidelines, keep it simple, keep it in scale. Respect historic resources and make the new design compatible with the existing context. So just to go through very quickly some of the key guidelines here. Staff has still a number of concerns about the mass and scale of the proposed building. The applicant has shifted the connector in response to the work session. The applicant has also included blind windows for code purposes related to the supporting structure to be reconstructed. There are some material changes to the large building. You see it a little bit more here. Originally, before the work session, there was a cement sort of panel system at the first floor. And the applicant has changed those materials. So just some of the comments from staff, and I'll kind of go back and forth with these two slides. And a little bit, staff performed a little bit more of a deeper dive into the comments for today's hearing. And because we've already, it won't be, how shall I phrase this? An ideal reconstruction of the supporting structure just based on the fact that it's a new building and with setbacks. But staff does feel that in that C of A with the Dean Brookie architect's drawings, it was going to be fire rated cedar shingles or a composite shingle. The applicant is proposing a metal roof. We just think if we could get a little closer to that approval, we should. So staff would recommend that be a composite shingle, fire rated shingles at the supporting structure to be reconstructed. And I do apologize, all of a sudden I got a little bit hoarse. With the building materials proposed, it's a combination of metal and wood cladding. However, just the way it's kind of just in large sections, staff also feels that that sort of contributes to the large significant mass and scale of it. And some of that could be broken up with a little bit more interplay of the materials perhaps, or using inset windows, which is in the guidelines, or more step back at the rear facade where the garages are, or using cornice lines or other design techniques to lessen the mass and scale. And then those are just some sort of material and spacing suggestions staff would have based on the guidelines, but overall still just the mass and scale of it, the staff would recommend that just be reduced. And we have some one and two a little unusual requests from staff, and I'll just kind of explain why. Our planning director just wanted HARC to identify whether the vent at the top is a vent or a chimney. This just relates to whether or not it's viewed as mechanical equipment. Technically, that current vent in the drawings on sheet A42 goes above the allowable height. The applicant may be able to address that in their presentation. HARC may also reduce the height anyway, which would make that comment moot, but that's just if HARC could just speak to whether they feel that's a chimney or a vent. Planning would like me, land use would like me to make that clarification today. So that's one thing. The parking spots, we will need more parking spots, although I believe today discussed at the 3 o'clock site visit, the applicant will follow through with a payment in lieu process for the additional parking that is needed. There's a tree on the site, and staff is still a little concerned about how that tree, which is on the neighboring property, will be kept because the construction will impact it. So an arborist report staff feels should be obtained prior to the next hearing. And another sort of a little bit of an unusual request at this early stage, but we think it'll benefit the applicant as well, is to have a fire egress plan performed. Staff, just in looking at the drawings, feel that the egress will eventually potentially change not only some of the interior staircases and layout, but some of the setbacks. Some of those windows might need to be fire rated windows. It might affect lighting. And what we kind of want to avoid is going through the HARC process, getting a CA, and then egress significantly changes it, and then we have to go back to the HARC chair. So we just think it's a good idea to perhaps perform that exercise early on and request it for the next hearing, along with the other comments you have today, just so that the next hearing is that much more closer to a finished set that we can approve. And I think I pretty much captured everything I want to go through. Again, just the overall mass and scale staff has concerns about. So our recommendation would be that this project be continued. Thank you very much.
Good job. Questions for Mike?
I have a question. Do you know if the shed on the lot just to the south, is that a contributing shed or is that a?
Offhand, no, but give me a minute. I might be able to, okay.
It is a contributing shed though? Thank you.
Okay. Anything else for Mike? Well, let's hear from the applicant. Go ahead.
Hi, Chris Parr, Shift Architects again. I'm just gonna run through the motions. I think we went through a lot of the items during the work session and on site today. Motion number one, the roof material. One, this is not a supporting structure. The agreement does say shingles. We're happy to do shingles. I just don't know what that really does other than maybe confuse people on whether this is really a contributing or supporting structure or a new build. I will let Chris talk about the height and width. We did bring in the, sorry, screen. We did bring in the connector by 18 inches. Okay, so on the small house, the rebuilt structure, during our last meeting, we came to the conclusion that we would leave the south, change out the windows like Mike mentioned, and then we shortened this gable over here to allow for egress out of the back house. As for the tree, we're working with the arborist now and also the structural engineer to kind of have that corner somewhat structurally cantilevered so that we can protect those roots. This proposal, which is different than the last one we showed, is lot line to lot line with the reduction of windows on both the north and south side. We are going to pursue the payment in lieu for the parking.
For the commercial space.
For the commercial space. We're happy to play with materials and listen to comments. And then and any feedback on the windows, happy to reset them. We can play with the rhythm. There's not really a lot at this point. They're all on the east and west elevation. And there, yeah, we have yet to reduce this deck off the alley here. But I just wanted to show this. This is quickly done in AI, and in the next meeting we will have these actual, because as the house that you were just discussing has a gable roof. This was just done for mass and scale on height only. That's it. Do you want to talk about the mass and scale?
Sure. So, this is in the commercial area of the town that allows for 0 lot line development overall. And so looking at condition 2 and 3, I just wanted to talk a little bit about those. Reduce the overall proposed height, width, and depth of the new building. Width for commercial, if that was done on every commercial lot in town, it'd look really weird to do that. I mean, typically we allow 0 lot line development. And so I think this already, you can look at the massing model where it's abutting the building to the south at 214 and the building to the north, the property line. The building to the north is really unique how they did that building to begin with, to basically have a 3-foot setback for egress and windows, knowing there would be a building there someday. And so what we're just asking for is, don't let that design drive a different design in the commercial core. because there's plenty of setbacks when you look at this property, especially when you're talking about pedestrian scale coming up. And if you look at like WCA 1A3, A is new interpretations of traditional building types are encouraged. That's really not what we're talking about. A3, it talks about historic proportions of height, width, and depth are very important to be compatible with historic mass and scale. Telluride and warehouse commercial kind of says it all. Those are bigger commercial buildings in the warehouse district. And this isn't what you would expect here. If that agreement didn't exist and this was a vacant lot, you would see a 2-story front facade, and we accept that. And so what this does, it gives a variety of setbacks and open space in the front, and it does step up really nice when you're looking at it. And then there's another policy in there that says, although the total aggregate floor area of new projects may exceed that of older buildings, and we do have the older 214 South Burr historic building that is right next to this. And nicely enough, we have this home here that's being preserved, restored, recreated, whatever you want to say, that will have a really nice scale next to that building when that property is built out. And so I think that scale is preserved. And then we have a taller commercial building to the south. And it says, for this reason, taller portions of new projects should be set back substantially from the street, which we've done, with a lot of stepping up. And as the building increases in height, the setback from the public way should also increase. And I think that's done nicely when you're looking at it from the front. Then there's policies to minimize any contrast and scale between a new project and historic buildings. I already touched on that. I think we do a great job with that overall in terms of the project and having that nice, smaller scale home on this lot next to the historic house on the other lot. And then it talks about a variety of 1- and 2-story heights, along with significant open spaces should be provided. And there's a lot more open space on this lot than you typically get in the commercial area with that smaller front building. And then it says building mass may increase in bulk in the interior of lot. So when there's a condition that says bring the mass in from the sides, that's just super unique in the commercial district. And I just respectfully disagree with that, since zero lot line development is allowed. And you already have a historic home that's set back in the front. And so that would be very unique to all of a sudden say on a commercial lot, we want to see increases in side setbacks. I get the alley is fair game. And I get relationship to pedestrian scale in the alley may still be a concern. And the story pulls out in that you saw them, they were shorter than the other building with the parapet wall to the north, and they relate to the building to the south, but you already have topography going downhill. So 214, the building that I helped with on that one, it's going to step down a little bit lower naturally in the streetscape anyway. But in terms of height, I would suggest the height here is fine in terms of fitting between the buildings. I think it's really a matter of the alleyscape, because you already have stepping up from the street going up, you have all these open spaces. And then, another incorporate the design per WC 6A1, 6C2, and 6D. A is develop the ground floor level of all projects to encourage pedestrian activity. We're doing that with the commercial small space in the front with the recreated home. Provide a variety in setback, height, color, texture, materials, building size, and form to enhance the pedestrian experience. I understand that's from the alley and street, but mostly from the street. This does way more than 214 does for that, just because it's a much smaller home and scale that was approved over there. There is a comment on the alley scale, and we'll probably hear some comments on that. And then use very building setbacks and changes in material to create interest and reduce perceived scale along alleys. So I get that there might be some alley concerns and other things, but overall, I think there's some moves here that can be done that are not that big that would warrant a continuance. And one of the reasons we're asking for that is because this development agreement requires permits to be pulled. And if we go to final, you'll see these changes that come in. That's another hearing that's out there in the future. And depending upon your view of the setbacks, if you believe commercial should have 0 setbacks as proposed, shouldn't be any change there. It really becomes then what's the massing and stepping down to the alley, at least in my opinion. So we are asking for an approval tonight, subject to conditions, and being able to come back to you with those plans at final. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Questions for the applicant?
So when you guys come back with your next application, you're gonna have articulated massing in the 3D model that you can kind of show and spin us around. And then will you include, it'd be helpful, I think, if you would include pedestrian level views from the front and the back, so we just have a
Sure.
better sense of that scale.
Yeah, I think the story poles were really helpful for that today.
I
mean,
agree.
that was
Yeah.
the whole thing that was out there. And I agree, the alley side, that was a little,
Yeah.
there, something needs to be done there, so.
Thank you.
Questions?
Oh, sorry, one more thing. On the tree, you have a special meeting coming up to talk about the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code, and if that's adopted, and I read it today, it depends on when it's gonna be applied. That law is set up to where it almost would appear to apply to a building permit.
Okay.
And not a HARC CA. And if that is adopted, that tree has to, and applies to 214, that tree's gonna have to be removed because its drip line is within 5 feet of
That's
that.
why we have another meeting to discuss this.
Yeah, so anyway, it's a question more than anything, because I get you can vary a little bit, but that's a mandatory code from the state, and I look forward to participating in that.
Well, but
listening to
yeah,
that.
okay.
It's not even on our property.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Understood.
but you want to mention what you did in the field about measures to protect that tree?
Oh, she told us,
Yeah,
and
there's-
I think the board appreciates that.
Okay,
I can,
thank you.
there's a way.
Yeah, there's one front deck there. so
Thank
I
you.
think it'd be-
Okay. Any other questions? If not, we'll hear from the public. Any public comment? If you're out there virtually, please raise your hand.
No hands raised.
Nobody. Okay. Okay, we're ready for deliberations. I have one question. Number 2, the condition 2,
Question for us or?
the question for us.
Yeah.
When I read this, I know we have the 0 lot lines. I definitely agreed with Michael on the height and depth. Depth has something to do with alley setback and or maybe his condition 4 more setbacks could include from the restored or replaced house and or from the alley. But are we okay with the width? I just want to see where we are.
I agree with what Chris said, and I would strike width.
That's kind of why I asked.
In agreement as well.
Okay,
What Matt said, yeah.
but can we say that we still support number 2 with respect to like to see some reduction of height and depth, which relates to the setback on number 4, setback from the alley could be depth of the and or from the street. Are we good with 2 and 4? Concurring with?
I just have a comment regarding the width. And there wasn't really a whole lot of treatment to policy 8 regarding views. Because I think from across the street, if you're looking at this across the street and looking eastward, there's a nice view of the mountains right now. This would completely obscure that view. So I think with a moving back the north facade, or at least at the second and or third levels, that may be able to preserve some of that view corridor to the mountains.
Haven't we established that there's no guarantee of views through private property?
Right.
And then
In this zone in particular, it's a slightly more stringent when you get over to HR, but Stacy is correct. And I would say, or I should have noticed that today, but thank you for pointing it out. Wouldn't it do more to help views with a lower height than it would a slot that's 6 inches wider, I assume, to look over to the mountains, I think.
And the Wilkinson Public Library behind it.
Yeah.
It's much lower than that, so.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
I was, can I?
Yeah.
Looking at the building and looking at the building next door and looking at the building on page 123, when it talks about, this is in the commercial zone, 3-story elements, 4-story elements. And it has an example of a 3rd story, which reads as a subordinate building element. So the building next door, the 3rd floor, if I'm correct, is pulled in from the parapet curb at the second, I guess the roof of the 2nd level. And it's treated as an element that just sits up there. rather than it being 3 stories high,
Uh-huh.
on the sides. And
At the photograph you're referring to, those are on street sides, not interior lot lines.
well, that's true. But the building next door. Can you blow up
Top left.
the top left or those two? No, it'd be the building to the north,
Yeah.
Adjacent, yeah.
the brick building.
That one,
to the
yeah.
north.
But the photos help more, right? You
Yeah.
want to see the photo of that elevation. You can just blow them up or blow one of them up.
I just think if, we're looking at trying to reduce the scale of this thing a bit, that treating that third level as a subordinate element would help that.
Mhm.
I think you could use the condition or policy 25, the introduction. After that, it talks about storefront buildings, which is what the photograph is. But I'm just throwing it out there as a possibility that it might help the overall, when you're looking at this thing, when you're looking at 3 stories from the street, if that were treated as a plunked on element, I think it would help the visual aspect of it from the street.
Sort of setback, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think another thing to sort of support that as well, possibly is policy 13 site planning, which relates to preserving solar access for neighboring buildings, and the building to the north, certainly having that 3-story straight up wall plane, that's, it's all pretty much windows and residences on that, on their southern facade. And so as far as, having a little bit of relief from just looking out the window and seeing a straight 3-story wall plane would be another maybe reason for setting back at least part of that northern elevation on the second and or third levels.
In conjunction with that, we have a setback, a recessed area on the south side with the windows. If something like that happened on the north side, it could possibly give those neighbors a little more light into their windows, since it is all residential, I believe, or mostly residential back there. Breaking it up a little bit might help that as well. I mean, you can keep the wall where it is, but maybe it steps in. Particularly, and if we want them to move the whole 3rd floor in, then that may not be necessary at the 2nd level.
Well, where do we want to go with that? That there has to be a change of wall plane after the 2nd floor, typical interpretation, but
I understand where Bob's coming from, and I do think if what would be that, the northeast corner stepped in a bit on the 3rd level, that would give more relief. But this is an anomaly of the building to the north has this is laid out to be 0 lot line situation.
Right.
So to force this project to respond to the building next, a new building, not an historic building next door, and do something atypical, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with. Yes, it would feel, step the mass and scale down, it would feel better. But what if this building to the north is redeveloped in the future and they change the egress path, or, and they go full lot line? That would be then a strange anomaly on this side. So, but I understand the intent, and I think the intent's good. I'm just not sure if
how we get there
100% by it. I'll just dive into my thoughts. I think the primary concerns are on the alleyscape. and just the mass and scale of that tall 2-story space. So I would like to see the majority of the focus being on breaking down the mass and scale of that alleyscape. I think it's broken down on the front facade. I'm not sure how I feel about the height yet. Looking at the story poles, I felt pretty comfortable where the height was demonstrated, but I would like to see the model with the other buildings and roofs articulated their appropriate slopes and heights to make that decision. And just kind of go down my list. I think the feedback we gave them on the historic structure, they've done that. I think that feels good and that would be appropriate. I would require they do composite shingles on there for the last guideline. And so I think I'm in general, I feel that Michael's write-up is great. I would strike width on number 2. And I'd let them see what they come back with. But to me, the primary thing to work through is the alleyscape.
Stacy?
So I guess I reviewed this on a different planet than you guys, but I am not on board at all with requiring composite or other fireproof shingles per a rehabilitation standard for a building that is not indeed being rehabilitated.
Well, I agree with you, and I rewrote the condition to say change the roof material to blah, 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 at the structure to be reconstructed per WC 32B4 and not use RE5 because it doesn't apply.
Blah, 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 composite.
Yeah.
With the composite, yeah.
But you used a different condition.
But wasn't it a specific condition of the approval before that it be shingled? You know, it's not supposed to be.
I don't remember.
So this is, Mike Owen, so I'll answer that. The CA that was approved, they proposed fire rated cedar shingles, and that's what the CA was based on, those drawings. Our staff interpretation was to add a little bit more flexibility to that and be like, well, composite shingles. Again, it's an unusual approval, it's an unusual situation, but still it's an inherited formal CA approval that HARC did approve. So I'm cautious about moving farther and farther away from that.
And we approved it before we rewrote the guidelines to allow composite. So I think the composite, I mean, look, it's indiscernible. Miner's building.
Okay, so let's change it from RE5 to.
Yeah, we're just changing the condition. We're agreeing.
WC 32B4.
WC 32.
B4.
Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, I feel like the new structure, well, they're all new structures, but the larger structure, let's say, is already substantially reduced in at least, well, I'm not on board with width. I would strike that right out of the gate. Height, I think, especially seeing the story poles, it's appropriate with what's in place on the north side and what's proposed on the south side. So I wouldn't propose a reduction in height at all. And depth is already severely constrained on the west side because of this requirement for this small building. I mean, this could be a 3-story storefront, like there is just 3 lots down, and it isn't. There's a significant setback baked into it out of the gate.
That's the project. That's
well understood. So I don't need to grind further. I think the reduction is baked into it. I don't need to require more. So I would strike 2 as well. 3, of course, get an arborist report. I don't feel the need to incorporate more setbacks in the design now. With that said, I was surprised there were no alley standards referenced, but AS 6, A2, develop human scaled entrances or similar elements to define doorways. Right now, the alley elevation, at least on the lower 2 levels, just suffers from the fact that it's flat. It's a flat elevation on those 2 levels. There's a material change, certainly, but I think there could be some articulation.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking taking it as far as stepping or doing any of that, but I just think a better articulated entrance would relieve that elevation. So I don't know how we write that in there, but again, I would strike 2 and perhaps add a 10 that threw in the alley standard. 5, reduce the size of the deck. I assume that's the west deck on the front. I think the size of that deck is what gives that 3rd level relief from the level below it. So that to me ties in with the reduction, which I just said I wasn't on board with. So I'm not on board with number 5 either, I guess. The parking plan, payment limit request,
Can you clarify, is that the deck, the western deck on the, is that what's in question here?
Yes, and I think that staff, part of it is also just incorporating more changes in plane, whether that's accomplished through a setback or through reducing the deck, just a couple more shifts in articulation and plane. I guess that I was thinking a little bit more holistically of, so maybe
I
that wasn't
agree, and I
conveyed.
did- I tried to look up that guideline and it talks about a differentiation, a stepping in wall plane when you exceed 50 feet, which here we're only at 29.
Are we talking east or west? I'm so sorry.
The west front. Right? As that was the question.
Yes.
It doesn't say, but I took it to mean the front west.
Yeah.
But I'm also saying that I'm not on board with it.
Okay,
So rest easy on my part,
all right.
for my part.
Oh,
Just me.
all right.
Okay, I got three more to get through. Revised interplay of building materials, sure. Window rhythms, window surrounds, sure. Egress plan, what guideline are we gonna pin to that? That's a building code item.
It's not in the guidelines. That's why I said it's an unusual request, but again, we just think it's a very good idea. But you don't have to include that if you
The
don't
only
want
thing
to.
is, we don't have a guideline to cite for this, but I think it's a really important issue that you should talk to them with, but it can't be part of our motion if we don't have a guideline, right?
I wasn't sure if it,
Maybe, if you look at, policy 6 pedestrian scale B, and this kind of sort of relates to egress, I guess. Consider developing paths within the parcel that encourage pedestrian access. And then also B2, when developing multiple buildings on a site, it's especially important to provide paths through this site, even if that last or that northeastern corner of the building could enable, a path from the alley through to the front of the site.
Are you concerned
Might
that it
also
might
have some-
change egress locations and therefore mass and scale?
exactly. So a preliminary review, even the egress path along the supporting structure to be rebuilt might need to be widened a little bit. Fire rated windows, lighting, but even just if they need to shift their interior staircases, I don't know if that use on the plan will then manifest in the exterior. So it just seemed like it would benefit the applicant, but again, we were viewing it more as like sometimes HARC needs additional documentation to get a broader picture on it, and we were hoping this would fall into that.
Sometimes it's a
Yeah.
chicken or egg. Sometimes we'll
Yeah.
match changes, they gotta go back sometimes, so I
But-
think they're hearing the conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
So just to summarize my comments, because they were quite a few of them, and they were a little scattered. One, fine, it's in there already, we'll keep it. For me, I would eliminate 2. I keep 3, sure thing. 4, eliminate. 5, I could probably eliminate. Payment in lieu requests, so you sure keep that. You keep the building materials, keep 8 and eliminate 9. So we're down to 5. That to me is approvable for me. So you don't have to agree or disagree, because if there are still for everyone else are.
Well, I'm just going on the
scale
word approved.
issues.
I think that I'm like Matt, I really want to see this without just the boxes, the actual context of the neighborhood in 3D.
Yeah.
Before we approve it, and well, we'll see. I'm not sure we all agree on the height or, certainly the treatment of the alley, which could be your alley standard or could be what Mike wrote on further setback. We'll see where we get. We need to galvanize on that in a moment. That's the only reason I would say we'll probably want to see it again, Stacy.
Okay.
To Stacy's comments, I understand the reasons you're saying all of them. I'd say I would agree with eliminating number 5. I don't think reducing that size of that deck is going to improve, the western deck is going to improve the project.
It provides stepping down
It
to
does.
that
Yeah, to the third level.
smaller structure.
So that I would support eliminating number 5. I would prefer to keep the rest in there.
Okay.
I did have one question about resource recovery areas. Are those shown in the drawing somewhere? Trash.
Yeah, I think, yeah, they're,
Sorry.
outlet next to the garage doors.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, trash receptacle.
Oh, Lisa, or Sherry, are you done?
I think so.
Okay, Lisa.
Okay, going down the list. One is what it is. I also agree with Stacy that I could strike two as well. The building felt appropriate for the site. It's a warehouse district. They've already reduced the volume. And for our work session, the tree stay as it is. I would strike four as well. Yeah, 6, 7 as stated, and I think 7 with the materials that could help articulate the alley and work on the just pedestrian scale from the alley. And yeah, I'll strike 9 as well.
Was everybody good with striking 9, egress plan? Or it's you
I'm
like
fine
check
to,
out our
I'm
yeah.
fine to leave it in.
All right.
And you
All right.
could cite a mass and scale guideline if you wanted to, but
Okay.
I think they've heard, so.
All right. Wait, there's no harm in leaving it in.
Yeah, I think the clarification was helpful because when I read that, I thought we were talking about a egress distance path diagram,
Mhm.
which is not us. It's building code. But if it is exterior and if it's widening a pathway on the exterior, it could come into play, I suppose, but
It definitely could.
Okay, let's
maybe
just leave it in for
articulate it a
now.
little better.
Do you have a final comment, Bob? And then I'm going to try to summarize something here.
I think I'm in agreement with the changes.
Okay, so real quickly,
Open it up again, sorry.
We have also a hand raised for public.
well, no, but about that, of course, we failed to put up our public process slide tonight for these people that are online to know when they can speak. So because we failed to do so, I think I'll allow the public comment, and then if it's something new that we didn't discuss, I'll certainly allow that you guys can re-comment. But let's take the public comment. I'm sorry you didn't hear the process steps and missed the public comment period, but I'm going to allow the question or comment, please. 3 minutes or less.
Thank you. This is Pascal Villiger. I am the resident of the building immediately to the north of the reference property, and I just wanted to maybe share a couple of thoughts as it relates to the current design. I think it was noted earlier that the wall that's on currently proposed on the north side is kind of a flat wall. Obviously entitled to do that in this construct, but I would ask maybe the architect to at least consider maybe modifying that with an inset or some other sort of maybe design choice that might alleviate that wall, because it's would be nice not to look directly at an entire wall assembly there, but obviously that's really a point of view that I share, as well as along with the other residences that share my building. I do think the alleyway, I think stepping up more gradually, particularly as it relates to the property immediately to the south, 214. I think it has a more gradual step up. So I think the board has articulated viewpoints on that, and I think we'd be supportive of a more kind of a gradual stepping up of that to allow a little bit more light in that alleyway in particular. And then I think, again, I think it was noted by one of the board members that, the top floor, if, at least in our building, is more of a kind of a smaller form factor. It doesn't run the width of the building. It would be nice to see maybe some consideration of that sort of a design into that kind of big block that we have in the back of the building. And so it'd be nice to just to get a little bit more sensitivity with maybe some of the other buildings around that, if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have to allow rebuttal from you, and then if you have a new topic, go ahead and comment.
Yeah. No rebuttal to Mr. Pascal's comments. In terms of seeing it again, you will with final review. We really would like to try to get an approval tonight. We'll bring it back with the model, all these changes at final, if that's okay with you. If you have to continue it at final, that's good. We just, because of this development agreement, we're trying to push this along a little
Okay.
bit.
Was it,
Years in October.
yeah, was there a reason that it had to go to August?
I think the changes are significant. I would like.
Oh, you would need
I
more
would
time
like to-
anyway. Okay. Well, you can't get it by, you'd have 10 days, so, okay, that's not gonna work. Okay, so back to deliberations. I'm trying to,
400 hours.
well, what do you mean? You only work 40-hour weeks? Jeez, okay. I'm trying to consolidate these. Let me, okay, I'm just taking notes. We're good with one. On number 2, before we scratch it.
Just changing it. Remove the word supporting and change the RE number 5 to WC 32.B4
Oh, yeah, look,
What do you mean the word supporting? On number 2?
on number 1.
Number one, because it's
Oh.
not technically a supporting structure. anymore.
Oh, okay. All right. So, okay, Bob.
What,
Okay.
what do you want to call it then?
Replacement structure?
No, you can just say
Single-story structure.
that the
Re-
structure
Replacement
to be
structure.
reconstructed. It's fine. Just take out supporting
Oh, okay. Just take out supporting. Okay. All right. Thank you.
and change it to WC 32.
All right.
B4.
Okay, I get ready to make a motion. Bob.
Sorry.
Number 2, before you eliminate it, I agree with the width like everybody else and even the depth, because I think we'll have a discussion on number 4 before we cross it. But because there were some good ideas here thrown out, but I would lobby, and I guess we'll take a straw poll to leave number 2, at least the height in there. And let's just look at what might come back. But I guess we'll just take a straw poll and get this over with. Does anybody support that? Leaving the height in there number 2 to have them look at.
I think they could look at the height.
Okay, that's
That's
one.
not a,
That's
I mean,
2.
they can,
You say no.
No, I would just strike width and keep number 2 in.
Oh,
Again, it's
okay.
until we see the massing model.
All right.
I don't know if height's an issue or not. There's also something we didn't address was the vent in the chimney. I don't
Yeah.
see any other mechanical systems up here, so I think they've got some mechanical things to figure out for mechanical penthouse or a sunken area that might affect the height. And they probably need to spend more time figuring that out before
Okay,
we.
that was one of my notes, so I'll cross it off. Well, they've heard the remarks. Okay, so we have 3 for number 2, whether we all agree or not, but then 3's.
2 without the width. Right.
Right, yeah, 2 without the width, as you get ready to make a motion, Bob. Number 4, more setbacks. My only thing was we could use Stacy's alley standard to basically make a bigger step down to the alley. Even the applicant acknowledged it, or use a combination of this one, more setbacks and or step downs on the alley, if that's all we're thinking about.
I think it's more of articulating wall planes and setbacks. Is that agree to that? Yeah.
Okay. So how we want to change that? Incorporate more step down or change in wall planes?
Change in wall planes in the
Yeah.
design.
Change the wall
And
planes.
then
Okay.
I don't,
Articulation of the entrances per AS.
And articulation of entrances. For AS2,
6A2.
AS 6A2.
6A2.
and I think you could leave the citations that are in there. I think the last 2 are more important than the first one, but I think
These
it's
are
fine.
added. This AS 6A2 is additive.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and then I think, did we all agree to leave the deck as is because it helps break up the?
I would strike number 5, agree
Okay.
with Stacy.
Are we all good? Lisa, you good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's make it.
Revised, okay, at 6 and 7 and 8 stayed the same and we're leaving 9 in there. My last question, and then I think we can get this to a motion, is well, maybe they'll reduce the heights, but on Michael's, well, I guess we're leaving 4 in that. We're modifying 4. But to me, there's 2 ways to skin that cat. You lower the height, or I'm still troubled by the quote, single-story house under context of neighborhood, being overwhelmed by the addition. So I agreed. I thought that the house should be further step back. However, if they lower it, to me, that solves the same problem. So I don't know whether we just say step back further and or lower the addition.
My comment at the last round was that I don't need to treat this smaller structure with the reverence we would if it were historic.
And so I retreated to just the normal context of neighborhood remarks about overwhelming. I gave up on the last meeting on any historic, but by the way, if a house ever burns down again, we made a mistake. I made a mistake. Our planner who's not here made a mistake. We should have had the carry forward language that any addition would include the same respect with respect to mass and scale as the historic house was. Otherwise, I wouldn't even approved to tear down the historic house because it could have been saved.
Asbestos says no.
Okay, well, that's not my problem.
Well, at any rate, we are where we are. Again, we're not trying to litigate the past.
Lessons learned. We ought to, if we have another fire, somebody remember that. I might not be here.
We'll put up a plaque.
Sorry?
We'll put up a plaque that says quoting Mark Shampoo.
I think if they have the context model correctly and they do some pedestrian views from across the street and at the sidewalk in front, it might convince us that it is set back enough.
Okay.
But I'd like to see that.
Okay.
Decision.
Trust but verify. Okay. So 1, we're just striking the word supporting. 2, we're striking with.
One, we're also changing the reference.
And adding WC 32. Okay.
B4.
You're all ready. Okay. Hang on. You asked for it. You're getting it. Number 4, we left in, but we changed more setbacks or excuse me. Or did we substitute? Change the wall planes and articulation per ASCA2. And AS 6A2.
Yes.
Is that what we said?
Yes.
Okay. 5's deleted. 6, 7, 8, 9 remain the same. Is that correct?
Go for it. I didn't, well, if you want me to do it, I need to get the
Notes.
number 4, what we're changing it to.
Oh, incorporate, Stacy, would you read, or Matt? I've got it here. Incorporate more change in wall planes and
Articulation of
articulation.
More steps in articulation in the wall plane.
Well,
When I say change in wall,
if we're going to refer to AS,
let's just use the language that's in there.
it says develop human scaled entrances or similar elements to define doorways. To me, that elevation's flat. Garage door in a flat plane.
Right.
Articulate them.
But now we've got this alley step back that even the applicant
Well,
admitted.
it all goes together. It goes together. It's all connected.
I
Then
think it'll, with just the alley reference on the doorway entrance, it'll from the wall plane.
For me.
Well, they've heard what we mean.
Yep.
Even if we can't say what we mean at this hour.
Now, can somebody read what we're gonna do here? Incorporate. What do we say?
Incorporate, it says incorporate change of wall planes and further articulated
Okay, slow.
articulation and further articulation at the entrance. And further articulation at the entrance for AS 6A2.
Okay, sorry, I have
Okay,
to,
Steve.
I write slowly. Incorporate changes in wall planes and
Articulate the entrance for AS 6A2.
entrances.
All right.
Particular entrances per. Give me it again.
AS, alley standard 6A2. 6A2.
WC 6
no,
No, AS 6A2.
AS.
Yep.
But we're keeping all the same references that are in there. We're adding.
And yeah, we're just, and then also per stuff that's one WC
And those, okay,
and those.
all right. I'll give it a shot. And so. 5 gone. Okay. 1 is just changing the words. 2, take the width out.
Yep.
3 stays. 4, is incorporate changes in wall planes and articulate entrances per AS number 6A2.
Yep.
6 stays the same, 7 stays the same,
We deleted 5, yeah.
yeah, 8 stays the same, 9 stays the same. Okay. And we're gonna approve?
No,
I want to
continue.
continue.
We're still gonna
to August
continue.
15th.
Okay.
Just like Mike wrote. Because you said you couldn't get it done before July, for July.
They have to come in for final. We
Still
will
have-
see this again.
Oh, I see.
I think it's limited conditions that we can make this happen.
I propose that as well.
That seems like a voice of reason all of a sudden. Maybe.
It's
Well, that's- we heard him in July.
Preliminary and mass and scale hasn't been satisfied.
We're
yet.
not, we don't normally do that, but now they have this development agreement, but why can't we bring them in July? Oh, you can't make the change.
I think we'll have better luck at final with everything completed moving forward, because you can always continue it again.
We don't normally do that when mass and scale is still up in the air. But Matt, you would
Promise will
think
make
we
you
should,
happy.
all these promises,
I know.
have they got to you yet?
Oh, God, let's go.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, let's, let's approve them. Sorry.
We still have a chance.
Yes.
Yeah, they still have a chance because we went back and forth on the height and the width and the mass and the scale, and yeah, some things will change, but not, I don't think they'll change that significantly.
That doesn't mean we wouldn't continue it
We could at that point.
if we're not satisfied.
Yeah,
Totally
we could. They're
Understood.
taking the risk.
Okay, well, Bob, what are you saying?
I could approve it.
Matt, no?
I'm not gonna.
Okay,
approve.
Stacy?
Yes.
1. Well, that's 3 votes. I don't have to vote, I guess.
You don't have to vote.
Well, you should vote.
Well, I don't have to do the straw poll.
Oh,
No, you don't do stuff.
You just did.
Well, it's over. No, okay,
Don't make the motion.
we're gonna approve it? We're gonna move to approve?
that's what you said.
Yeah.
You're making the motion. Do what you want.
All right.
Wonder what he's
We
gonna
don't
say.
continue to the meeting, certain. We just say I move to. approve.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, okay.
I move to approve the preliminary large-scale application for the new construction at 208 South First Street. In parentheses, south 5 feet of lot 6 in the north half lot 8, block 23, Telluride. Based on the findings in the staff memo dated June 17th with the following conditions. 1, revised to say change the roof material to fire-rated wood shingles or composite shingles at the structure to be reconstructed per WC 32B4. Number 2, modify this to say reduce the overall proposed height and depth of the new building per WC number 1A3 and WC 21. Number 3 is written. Number 4, incorporate change in wall planes and articulate entrances per AS number 6A2 and WC number 6A1, WC number 6C2, and WC number 6D. Delete number 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 as written. Right?
You have to. I will second.
Any other discussion of friendly amendments?
Should I read the last line here, or I need to do?
Yeah, just read that 1 second.
Since it's approved, you also need to say the
Okay.
plan.
I'll just read it from another one here.
Yeah.
Let me see, here. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held on June 17th, 2026. Notice that such hearing provided is required by the Telluride Land Use Code. Revised plans incorporating the conditions of approval shall be submitted within 60 days of this approval, or this approval becomes null and void. Unless otherwise indicated, the revised drawings submitted for certificate of appropriateness must be a complete set with any changes to the drawings clouded and labeled. Any changes to the drawings beyond the conditions of approval may result in more than one submittal being required.
Stacy, yes.
Matt, no.
I have to expose my vote now. Mark, yes.
Bob, yeah.
Elita, yes.
Bob, where you said yes?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We have two motions we need to make on item number 4 and 5.
Want to do those?
The agenda, whoever would like to do those,
I can do them if you want. I'll keep doing them.
keep rolling.
Okay. For the request of the applicant, the following will be continued without discussion to the August 19th, 2026 HARC meeting. Project 238 North Pine to be continued without discussion. Do I need to read everything else?
No.
No. Okay, that's the motion.
Yep.
We have a second?
I'll second. Stacy.
Hey, Stacy, vote.
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Elita, yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'll do the next one too.
Good.
For the request of the applicant, the project at 238 North Pine. The following will be continued without discussion to the August 19th, 2026 HARC meeting.
Do we have a second?
Oh,
Wait a minute, you're recused.
Wow.
It's true.
Matt will second.
Good point.
Good catch.
Jerry, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Elita, yes. You were not supposed to vote for the previous one either. Neither one of you, right?
Yeah, who's recused for 208?
I asked about that when the last time we heard that one.
Did you participate?
I did.
Okay, that's okay. If you're not recused, then you can vote.
Working on a project next door
No, that's
is not a reason for recusal.
You don't have financial.
I have no financial.
No, I'm sorry about the previous one you seconded.
I know. That's what they're saying. I shouldn't have.
Right.
I shouldn't have been involved in either
Continuances.
Let's do it over again.
All right.
So this is a new motion on number 4?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Number
and
4.
Stacy is recused.
Yep.
Aren't you recused too?
No.
From
My God.
Who's recused from 238 North Pine?
Oh,
Okay, Mark,
Yeah.
leave. Who else is recused from 238 North Pine?
Stacy.
I am. You are.
And Andrew left on.
and
Okay, that's okay. We can continue with
Yeah.
4. Yeah. So
Okay, so.
So I'll do number 4 and number 5 again.
Recused.
Yeah.
No,
Stacy and Mark are recused.
Mark and Drew.
yeah.
But
Are you
he's-
recused from
he's
number
not here.
4 or number 5?
So Bob, if you wouldn't mind making those motions again, Sherry will vote and we'll proceed with 4, which is it.
For the request of the applicant, the project at 238 North Pine will be continued without discussion to the August 19th, 2026 HARC meeting.
Matt will second.
Jerry, yes.
Matt, yes.
Bob, yes.
Elita, yes.
Okay. For the request of the applicant, the project at 238 North Pine will be continued without discussion to the August 19th, 2026 HARC meeting.
Elita would second.
Jerry, yes.
Matt, yes.
Bob, yes.
Elita, yes.
Okay, 30 seconds. I didn't want to ever say we went past 9 o'clock. Is the board okay with requesting staff, since we're in floodwaters, unintended? That if we have anything over 3 to 4 inches, which to me is a no-brainer for minimal, that we actually have a site walk? Or do you not feel the need? If it might be over what we call minimal, do we feel the need for a site walk? Or are we just gonna go all look ourselves? We can go all look ourselves, I guess.
I think it'll let, you look
Well,
ourselves. I think.
First of all, we're not supposed to go look by ourselves because that's doing research as an individual, which we're
Well,
not supposed to do.
Okay, this is pretty important crossroads. That's all I'm saying. If it's more than 3 to 4 inches raised, should we have a site walk?
I think it would be helpful. I was familiar with the project today, like I said, because I walked by it, but
Yeah.
I think it should be 6 inches because that's a riser.
I'll go
And
with that.
then that's a,
Anything over 6 inches?
yeah,
Okay,
that's a clean roll.
good. Thank you.
Yeah.
We will adjourn at 9:03.
Sorry.
I forgot to recuse myself from those because I haven't worked on them.